Hello, fellow Gnostic sex cultists. Happy Thursday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show where we do deep dives, usually into the far left political ideology, to see what's really going on, where you see primary source evidence that you don't see anywhere else. But I'm going to be honest. Can I be honest? Can I be honest? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Look at this conservative. Look at this conservative over on Twitter telling me I should kill myself. Look at this. Aren't Zionist conservatives just like the biggest cucks in the world? Is it just me? Is it just me? Or are these people literally like the biggest losers in the world? Hang on, let me just make sure I can block this person. I mean, we know they're all compensating for having incredibly small penises. We know that's what this is really about. But, you know, I just don't even know. I don't even know. Anyway, well, that was a spicy way to start things off, isn't it? All right, guys, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. I am taking just a slight point of personal privilege. No, but this is true. Listen, man, listen. Before October 7th, I really never cared in my life if someone was Jewish, and I never cared in my life if someone supported Israel or didn't support Israel. I did not give a flying flip about Israel. I didn't give a flying flip about any of this stuff. But I'm sorry, man. The Zionist cucks have gone insane ever since October 7th. Like, we've seen just a whole litany of them. Dave Rubin went insane and started trying to get people fired from their jobs. The entire staff at the Daily Wire went insane. We're going to see Lauren Chen drag Ben Shapiro today. I mean, like, basically every conservative influencer is just like sucking the cock of Israel. It's disgusting. It's actually really gross. And it's like, bro, I'm old enough to remember a time when all of you guys were saying America first, America first, America first, America first. And apparently the only people who actually legitimately believed in an America first philosophy was Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, as it turns out. Because, you know, I just didn't know that America first meant Israel and putting Israel's needs above American needs and sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to Israel and canceling anyone who doesn't want to send billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to Israel. Like, it just never, maybe I was just naive. I'm sure that's what it was. It just never occurred to me that Israel was supposed to be our highest priority above everything else in the world. It's gross. And they're trying to cancel everyone that disagrees with them. And it's like this pro-Hamas bullshit. By the way, guys, if you believe that the campus protesters are pro-Hamas, if you believe that's what's really driving this, you are listening to a lot of really, really, really bad grifting shills who are lying to you to advance the Israel first political agenda. That's just reality. If you believe that the campus protesters are pro-Hamas or anti-Semitic, you're probably listening to a bunch of grifters that are shills for Israel, that are paid to shill for Israel, that are scared to death to lose their status within the conservative influencer sphere if they don't shill for Israel. You know who I really feel sorry for? It's kind of like it's the liberal values cucks, like the Konstantin Kissins. That Konstantin Kissin really, like, I feel like Konstantin Kissin really was like, he was this close to being like, he thought it was his time to be the great savior of liberal values. And now all of this stuff about like the IDW stuff that used to be big a couple years ago, Like all of that stuff about saving liberal values, no one's even talking about that anymore. It's just all about either you're shilling for Israel or you're not shilling for Israel, and no one actually gives a flying F about saving the world for liberal values. I don't even know what liberal values means anymore. But what I do know is I haven't seen Konstantin Kisin calling out all of the Zionist cucks who are trying to censor the speech of people that they disagree with. There are even conservatives that are calling for protesters to be murdered in cold blood. Like, really, conservatives? Really? You think you're the party of protecting every life when you're literally arguing for people to be murdered for saying words you disagree with? Where have I seen a cancel mob wanting to cancel and destroy anyone for words they disagree with before? Where have I seen that? Does anyone know? Huh. It sounds familiar to see cancel mobs running around trying to get people fired and destroy their reputations and get them deplatformed off of social media. Where have I seen this before? Oh wait, that's what the left was doing back in 2019 when I woke up. And now conservatives are doing exactly the same thing that the left was doing, and they don't have a single ounce of self-awareness to understand. This is like, yes, we are in the satanic panic. Anyway, we're going to be watching some influencer content today because I need a break. I am taking a point of personal privilege because for the last 2 days I have been spending several hours doing spy stream. We did a 2-day spy stream, and I can tell you guys what it is now for people who weren't able to attend spy stream. You can find all of the archives on my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. But essentially, guys, I just need a little bit of a lighter day because in the past 2 days, me and I think, many members of my community have been deep in queer liberation training because for the past 2 days, we were spy streaming this. I don't have the whole thing recorded because there were a whole bunch of presentations, but I have several presentations recorded from the California Community College LGBTQ plus summit. This was something that was sponsored by the Chancellor's Office of all the California community colleges. It was held virtually, which is why we were able to spy stream it. It was broadcast to every California community college campus in the country. And we got some juicy clips. I'm just going to tell you right now. If you weren't there, you're going to find out soon. But I'm just going to tell you right now, we got some really juicy clips. There's a lot of psychotic queer theory going on in the California community college system. By the way, that's funded with $10 million from the taxpayers. We learned that. They kept emphasizing that. They were so proud of their $10 million of funding that they got from the taxpayers in the state of California to fund the queer theology, it's not theology, the queer theory ideology permeating throughout every single community college in the entire state of California. $10 million. Anyway, we've been watching this the past couple days, basically for 4 hours a day. And so I wanted to do something a little bit lighter. Of course, we also did the protest stuff. We're still going to cover a little bit of a protest update today. But what we're actually going to be spending most of our time on is there's a couple things I want to watch. Number one, people are recommending that I watch this video that Lauren Chen posted yesterday. Ben Shapiro simps for the swamp. Big con at it again. Now, listen, man, I have a lot of respect for Lauren Chen. Lauren Chen is really putting herself out on a limb to speak up about some things that are going to be very unpopular with the people that Lauren Chen is associated with. And so I have a lot of respect for her because so far as I can tell, she's not taking any shit. And I would bet all the money in my bank account that Lauren Chen has been given a couple stern talking tos behind the scenes by people that she's associated with about how dare you do this. And she seems to just be moving forward with it anyway. So I want to watch this video to see what Lauren Chen did to Ben Shapiro, because apparently she dragged him pretty hard, and I think that that's just going to be good entertainment for all of us. And then I want to watch Nick, my boyfriend Nick. Well, kind of quasi, sometimes on again, off again, internet boyfriend when I'm not hanging out with big tech, which he's not really been around lately. So, maybe I'm just internet single right now. Maybe that's just the reality. Maybe I'm just internet single right now. I know Sophie's always like hanging around, but we haven't been doing Sophie content lately. I haven't really been watching Nick content lately. Big Tech is like off hermiting or whatever the fuck he's doing. Maybe, you know what? It's okay to be internet single every once in a while. We don't always need to have an internet or boyfriend or girlfriend. Sometimes internet boyfriend and girlfriends are much more of a headache than they're actually worth. Can we just be honest about that? Sometimes it's okay just to be on your own, you know? No. I'm not saying anything bad happened with big tech. I'm just saying that he's not like he and I aren't talking. So it's not we didn't have a fight or anything. Like it's just like we were talking a lot for like a period of time, and now we're just not. And it's cool, man. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I'm not mad at him or anything. He didn't do anything. If he ever wants to come around again, we'll probably hang out. I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. Maybe sometimes I like independence is important. Okay, I'm an Aries. Independence is important. Yeah, well, Waffens always does keep him busy. I can't watch Waffens videos. I can't do it. I can't. I fucking can't. Like what? Like I don't want to talk about it. Okay, I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, we're gonna watch Nick, and because I actually am legitimately interested in what Nick's take on Colombia and the entire situation around Colombia is, and I honestly haven't been watching him, so I don't know what he thinks, and so I just want to watch the show that he did last night to see what his opinion is on it and maybe react to it. And hopefully Nick has a good take. Hopefully, fingers crossed. If Nick doesn't have a good take on this, I just don't know if I can go to Afpac. Because I've been thinking about this. Naruto says Lauren Chen is going after Ben Shapiro hard. I'm loving every second of it. Well, I'm looking forward to that, Naruto. So, like, I've been thinking about this Afpac thing. So, for people who don't know, I was extended a VIP invitation to go to Afpac, which is like the big America First Political Action Committee rally conference, whatever it is, in Detroit in June. And I've been going back and forth on it in my head. First off, my first consideration is it AFPAC does actually overlap with something I already have scheduled. So there is actually a scheduling conflict. It's not an impossible scheduling conflict to fix, though. Like, I could fix it if I decide that it's important for me to go to AFPAC. I would have to make a sacrifice in order to do it, though. I want to be really clear about that. If I end up going to AFPAC, it means I'm giving something up that I was already scheduled to do. All right. I'm not saying that it would be the end of the world. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm just saying there is a legitimate scheduling conflict that I'm like working through in my head. So that's part of my reasoning about AFPAC. But on the other hand, James Lindsay and Michael O'Fallon hate the Groypers. They hate them. James Lindsay and Michael O'Fallon. Michael O'Fallon is the guy who writes the checks for James Lindsay for New Discourses, for people who don't know. They hate Nick Fuentes. They hate the Groypers. And it's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing. So just like on the basis of like James Lindsay rails on the Groypers all the time because he doesn't understand them, like I might have to go to AFPAC on that basis alone, because it's just another differentiating point between me and the evil Gnostic sex cult empire over there. And so that's another consideration. There are some other ones too. So I'm working through the thought process of whether or not I want to do it. I'm kind of leaning towards yes. But again, I do have to figure out that scheduling conflict. Anyway, if Nick doesn't have a good take on Colombia, I just don't know if I can do it. I just don't know. I just don't know. Because there are correct takes on this and there are incorrect takes on this. And so I'm looking forward to that. Oh, she posted another video bashing Ben Shapiro. All right. Is Naruto, is that video worth watching in addition to the one we're already going to watch? Let me know. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, before we get into that, there's a couple other things I want to talk about, just a couple quick updates. Now, this is possibly the this is possibly the funniest update of the entire student protest saga so far. And if you were on my spy stream earlier and you already heard about it, like, forgive me for saying it again, but not everyone was on spy stream earlier. That was a supporter only event. But this is by far the best update of any of the student protest groups. So, as you guys know from yesterday, Harvard students have now set up a Gaza solidarity encampment on Harvard Yard. All right. And we were all a little surprised that it took them this long to do it because it's Harvard, but they've gotten their act together. They had some meetings. They set up their encampment. They took over Harvard Yard. Harvard Yard is now closed to everyone. Even, like, I was thinking about going down to Boston tomorrow just to make the rounds to all the colleges. There's now an encampment at Northeastern. I think there's one at Tufts. The Emerson encampment got raided last night by the cops. I'm shocked that Boston University, which is my alma mater, doesn't have one yet. MIT has one, I think. So I was thinking about maybe going down to Boston tomorrow just to, like, make the rounds and see what's going on. But I won't be able to get into Harvard Yard probably unless they open it up later in the day. So I guess we'll see. But this is really funny. So the Harvard Crimson has a real-time update website where they're giving us updates on the Gaza encampment. And the Harvard Crimson is like the student newspaper. They're actually doing a really good job with real-time updates. So last night at 11:30 p.m., the Harvard Crimson posts, organizers notified those at the encampment that the yard's sprinklers will go off at some point in the night as regularly scheduled. They asked student protesters to bring their and others' bags out of the encampment so they don't get wet overnight. As the weather gets colder into the night, organizers are also reminded protesters for extra blankets, etc., etc. The Harvard dean was walking around. So the sprinklers were going to go off. This was the big plan the university had. The students are not going to survive the sprinklers in 30-degree weather, which actually is, it's actually not the worst plan in the world if we're honest about it. Well, they didn't listen. The Harvard students at the encampment didn't listen. And around 3 or 4 a.m., the sprinklers came on as they were previously warned they were going to. And the Harvard students were apparently caught off guard, and their tents got flooded at 4 a.m. in 30-degree weather. It gets chilly in the night, guys, still in Boston. So there's a big hullabaloo about that. And then the Harvard Crimson posted an update at 4:05 a.m. as protesters spend their first night in the Harvard Yard encampment. The biggest threat to their stay has not come from the administrators or Harvard University police officers, but from the yard's sprinklers. So this was putting the encampment in danger. All right. It all could have been over. But no, breaking news, because Harvard students are nothing if not resourceful. And it may have taken them a little extra time to figure it out, but eventually they got there. And so the latest update from the Harvard Crimson at 1 o'clock this afternoon, protesters have begun moving tents to adjacent patches of grass closer to Harvard Hall for logistical reasons, presumably to avoid the sprinklers that sprayed the encampment last night. So, at least for the time being, the sprinklers were winning. Everyone thought they were going to pack up and go back inside, but nope, they've regrouped. And now they've moved the encampment to get away from the offending sprinklers. That is just, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know why this is so funny for me, but it's just like, it's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, just like turn on the fucking sprinklers. Like, that's like literally all you guys had to do. But nope, the Harvard encampment lives to fight another day. So I guess we'll see how long that's going. And again, guys, I do actually legitimately want to recommend that you check out the Harvard Crimson website because they are actually doing really good real-time updates of this. This is something you're interested in. And actually, right before I went live, I noticed a real-time update that is pertinent to our interests. So, pop quiz for the chat. Let's see who's been paying attention. What is the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and where do we know them from? What is the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and where do we know them from? Pop quiz. Let's see who's been paying attention. I really should make a sprinkler t-shirt for my store, like a limited edition sprinkler t-shirt. Yup. We watched from the Party of Socialism and Liberation a 6-hour women's socialism conference. We've watched them on Socialism Saturday. Specifically, yup, they were the ones about a year ago that we saw. Nope, this is not Cop City. Not Cop City. So, this is the same group. This group, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, has written a book called Socialist Reconstruction, and basically it is their vision for the future socialist world. We watched that video back in November. In that video, they flat out said the 2020 riots will happen again in 2024, and they're going to be worse this time. And that clip is available on my website, which is Karoin, KAROIN.substack.com. There's the link in the chat. We're not going to watch it. It's about 10 minutes long because they went back and forth from a couple topics. But essentially, the core message in this video was we're going to provoke the riots again, and we're going to do it even worse this time. Well, let's just read this update. Let's just read this update. 4:26 p.m. City Hall protest canceled. A planned Thursday afternoon protest at Cambridge City Hall in support of pro-Palestine encampments at universities in the Boston area was canceled at the last minute as organizers instructed supporters to move into Boston itself. An Instagram post by the Boston branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, a leftist group, originally instructed protesters to move to Northeastern. Organizers at City Hall told them to go where the students were arrested at Emerson, yada, yada, yada. My point is this. The Party for Socialism and Liberation is helping the students in Boston to organize. Additionally, we already know that the Party for Socialism and Liberation is helping the students at Columbia and NYU in New York. So that's at least 2 cities that we know of for absolute certain that the Party for Socialism and Liberation is helping the students to organize. This is the same Party for Socialism and Liberation that we got on video last November flat out saying the riots of 2020 are going to happen again, and they're going to be even worse this time. And now they seem to be smack dab in the middle of the college protests. Who would have thunk it? We did. We knew this because we had them on video saying it from months ago. From months ago, we had this. And by the way, and I mentioned this before, I passed this around to like every conservative influencer and I said, do you think people should know about this? Do you think people should know about this? Do you think people should know about this? It's in James Lindsay's DMs. James Lindsay ignored it because why would he possibly share content that I sent him? That would actually be supportive and actually trying to work towards a goal together. Everyone's been telling me to be collaborative with James Lindsay for years and years and years. What they don't know is I tried to be collaborative with James Lindsay, including sending him important stuff like video clips of socialists saying they're going to recreate the riots of 2020, and he refused to share them because he just didn't deem it important. None of your conservative influencers deemed this as important. And oh, wait, what's happening now? Exactly what I said would happen last year. I'm just saying. I got to give myself pats on the back. No one else is gonna. So that's one thing that's happening. Here are a couple other updates just going through my Twitter feed here. And again, guys, there are some people I definitely recommend you follow. Stu Studio is going to be one of them. He is at Stu Studio. This is video that he posted last night from a metric ton of students at Emerson College got arrested last night. I think they arrested like 50 students. They had basically taken over an entire alleyway in the city of Boston. And so they're holding a press conference because the Emerson students are not pissed off or not happy that they all got arrested. Let's see. This is an encampment getting set up at Northwestern University in Illinois. This is UCLA's encampment that's just going up. I want to try to create a map of these things. I know Newsweek already kind of has one, but it's not good. Let's see. What else do we have? What else do we have? Oh, this is a photo of the keynote that we watched earlier today. Well, this isn't obviously of the keynote, but this was the keynote speaker. Just if anyone wants to know what I've been up to the last couple of days, we literally watched this person in this photo. I know you can't see their face, but you can imagine. We watched that person give a keynote speech earlier. Let's see what else. Emory University in Atlanta is starting to have a lot of problems. Atlanta, of course, is the home of Cop City, which is a far leftist kind of like organized group. And so they're probably going to be coordinating with the students at Emory University. This is a professor getting arrested there. That's another one. What else do we have? Oh, they took over the Fashion Institute of Technology. So the Fashion Institute of Technology is in New York City. They don't have any lawn space. So instead, the students are taking over an entire building. We also saw this with the New School, which is also in New York City. They don't have lawn space that they could take over. So what they did was instead take over the executive office suite. So that's happening. Let's see. This is more from Emory University. And also, honestly, like Emory University looks like it might be a contender for like the site that's going to have the Kent State incident. The Kent State incident is what I basically started screaming about yesterday, which is that I really think the students of Columbia are trying to recreate Kent State, but it doesn't necessarily have to be at Columbia. It could literally be any of these student groups. If someone gets shot by the cops or the National Guard or there's an excessive amount of violence, they are trying to recreate Kent State. And if they do this, they're going to spark off a summer of nationwide protests. Like, it's going to be worse than 2020, and it's not even going to be close. And I think Emory could be a good contender for where that might happen. This is George Washington University. I also saw another video at George Washington University where there were like massive lines of cops. And so that's another place where they're now there. And I think that the American University students were going to join them as well. Let's see. This is at here's Party for Socialism and Liberation. See there. And honestly, guys, you might not like them, but they are actually a really good Twitter account to follow if you want to know what's going on with the protests, because they're helping organize them, just like I said they were going to. But this is at Northeastern University, also in Boston. And so the cops showed up, the students linked arms, but they ended up scaring the cops away because the cops left without arresting anyone. And there's video of that as well. Yep, here it is. Northeastern students and supporters cheers the police are forced to leave the Gaza Solidarity encampment. So maybe I'll go there tomorrow to see what's going on. That actually looks like it could be productive. Anyway, lots of stuff going on. You can make sure to follow me on Twitter. I am at check this out. Check this out. Apparently, the University of Southern California has canceled its graduation. Like, that's crazy, guys. USC is a massive university. There were also, like, imagine this. You have a kid that you've just spent 4 years putting through a really expensive college in the form of USC. You're getting ready for graduation. Graduation is just weeks away. And then all of a sudden, this bullshit starts to happen. And the entire graduation exercise that you've already bought plane tickets for, you've already booked hotel rooms for, the main stage graduation that everyone wanted to do is canceled. This is a big deal. Universities don't do this willy-nilly. Like, that's crazy. So what happened is, though, the University of Southern California basically had this valedictorian, and this really pissed off the students because the valedictorian was scheduled to give a speech at graduation, right, as valedictorians do, but the University of Southern California canceled the valedictorian speech because of a post she made on social media calling for the complete abolition of Israel. And look at this person's course of study. The 2024 valedictorian, she is from Chino Hills, California, studying biomedical engineering with a minor in resistance to genocide. A minor in resistance to genocide. And actually, the University of Southern California has a whole critical race theory consulting division. I never really talked about this, but we found this a long time ago. There is an entire division within USC that helps businesses to implement like DEI strategies, like and it's like literally called something like critical race theory like training or whatever. It's like really overt. So it kind of seems like the University of Southern California made a bunch of little monsters, because why are they offering a minor in resistance to genocide? Is that something that requires a college minor? Yeah, exactly. How is that a minor? What does that even mean? What classes are being offered in terms of like resistance to genocide? Can you major in I mean, I'm not saying genocide is good. Genocide is obviously bad. I think we should probably all be resisting genocide. I've said a million times, I'm anti-war and anti-genocide. If the Israelis were the ones being genocided, I would be against that. It just so happens that in this case, the Israelis are not the ones being genocided. The Palestinians are the ones being genocided. And so I'm an equal opportunity anti-genocide person. But is there a college major in resistance to genocide? Like, I just didn't I thought maybe we had evolved. I don't know. Anyway, that's going on. What else is happening? Anything else? No, that's pretty much it. So, guys, if you want up to the minute updates, I really am trying to I'm trying to do the best coverage on this that I can. I'm monitoring all the different colleges. I have all the different people who are monitoring this, like the good people, not the bullshit clickbait guys, because there's a lot of clickbait going on. I'm going to show you on the ground primary source video evidence. I'm going to try to bring it all together for you so that everyone understands what's going on, okay? Because I really do think that this could get really bad. No joke. This May Day is coming up next week. May Day is like a socialist holiday. It commemorates the struggle for revolution. That's on Wednesday. May the 4th, which is the anniversary of Kent State, is coming up next Saturday. On a Saturday? Are you kidding me? They're going to be celebrating the anniversary of the Kent State massacre on a Saturday while all of these protests are going on. And I really do believe they're trying to provoke violence. I believe they're trying to provoke a cop to shoot someone or the National Guard to shoot someone. All of these people who are cheering on, like the cops being called on these protesters, yo, you're giving them what they want. They want to be martyred. And the minute that something happens, and this is getting so big now that I don't know how you're going to be able to get around it. Like, someone's going to do something stupid. And the minute that someone does something stupid, and we have another summer of riots like we have never seen before. So follow me on Twitter. I'm Dr. Carlin B. That's going to be your best source of like the up to the minute content that I have. I'll continue to be focusing my content efforts on what's going on with the student protests, on the larger picture for it. If you missed yesterday's stream, by the way, go back and watch the last part of it where we're listening to that philosophy document about students wanting to tear down the university. It was really, really good. But we're going to turn our attention to something else. We're going to watch some content, okay? So I have two pieces that we're going to watch. We are going to watch Nick Fuentes, Groypers, sit tight. I know you only want to see Nick, but listen, if you're a Groyper and you're here, first of all, welcome. Come chat with us. Just be nice, okay? You don't need to be dicks about it or anything. Just be nice. We're going to watch Lauren Chen drag Ben Shapiro, so I know it's not Nick. We're going to get to Nick, I promise. But I think even the Groypers would like watching Lauren Chen drag Ben Shapiro. Lauren Chen is one of Nick's girls, too. So you guys are supposed to like her as well. So the first thing we're going to watch is Lauren Chen dragging Ben Shapiro, and then we're going to listen to Nick's take on what's going on in Colombia, and I'm going to comment on it, and that's what we're going to do. All right, guys, please do mount the like button for me. If you would be so kind, I want to make sure I get all my super chats in. Let's see. Yes, it's worth watching a kind of video update on the one from yesterday. All right, Naruto, I'll look into that. Thank you. Milo, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's do it.
I mean, I think that every Jew throughout world history who has a brain and knows history has always wondered if a country that is not a Jewish state is going to eternally provide them security guarantees and full citizenship. Of course, I mean that's I think to think that that's why the existence of the state of Israel is the single greatest guarantor of my loyalty to the United States, frankly.
Guys, let's talk about Big Con for a second. You know, big conservative, the figureheads of the establishment conservative movement, because over the past few days, I have been informed by some of these people that, number one, unless I support sending billions and billions of taxpayer dollars, including my dollars, overseas, then I'm not really patriotic. And actually, I'm kind of a hypocrite. And it's what we should do if we love America. But also, if that wasn't enough, that if I dare question politicians in the United States who are making foreign policy decisions, then, well, basically that means I just hate America.
Sorry, I missed this super chat from Kino. Sorry, it just showed up. I apologize. So you're talking about Emory University? Okay, most likely Centennial Olympic Park if it's Atlanta. All right, Kino, thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
America. And to be clear, these are not things that neoliberals in the Democratic Party are saying, people like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. No, this is rhetoric that is coming from supposedly the right, people who are supposed to be protecting us against the scourges of globalism. Lauren, what are you talking about, you might be asking? Well, for context, as I'm sure we're all aware of by now, that massive foreign aid spending bill that was in the House, it has officially passed and now goes to the Senate, at least at the time that I'm filming this. And this bill, by the way, was a doozy, 95 billion buckaroos. And a little breakdown of where exactly that money is going to. The bill provides $60.84 billion to address the conflict in Ukraine, including $23 billion to replenish U.S. weapons. People might say, well, if that money is going back to U.S. weaponry, then it's not really fair to call it foreign aid. And it's like, well, it actually kind of is fair to call it foreign aid if the reason why the weapons need to be replenished in the first place is because we sent the weapons that should have been there overseas. Okay. We also have, $26 billion for Israel, our greatest ally, including $9.1 billion for humanitarian needs. So in case anyone is confused right now, yeah, the U.S. is actually providing military assistance to one side and simultaneously humanitarian aid to the other side that is being harmed with that military assistance. Love it. Love it. And we also have $8.12 billion for the Indo-Pacific, including Taiwan. And by the way, this bill was supported unanimously by Democrats and also House Speaker Mike Johnson, the same person who previously expressed concern for the southern border, but as of yet hasn't really seemed to make it a priority. Instead, one of the first things that he did once he was elected to be House Speaker was voice the need for Congress to show their support to Israel, a country that he believes Christians have a divine right to support, not just morally, but actually with their...
So stupid. So stupid. We have no obligation to support any country that is not our own. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat, but we got TikTok banned. Yeah, we got TikTok banned. Own the libs. Never mind, it was a Trojan horse for funneling billions to Israel and Ukraine. It's just like... I was thinking about this. You know how Mike Johnson went to Columbia yesterday? And he went to Columbia to give a speech at Columbia where he was telling off the Columbia students. For those who don't know what that is, I actually posted a clip of it on my channel earlier today, so you can go and watch what happened. But I was kind of thinking about this last night. I was like, so Mike Johnson has just pissed off the entire conservative right by supporting this ridiculous spending bill for Ukraine and Israel. So he's pissed off basically every Republican. But then what does he do? He runs right to Colombia to tell off the evil anti-Semites, which is now going to make every conservative like cheer because Israel is our greatest ally. And now Mike Johnson is a hero because he went to Colombia to face down the evil anti-Semites, to call for the resignation of the Columbia University president. And it's like, people have such short memories that they can go from wanting Mike Johnson to resign a week ago to now being on Mike Johnson's team because he said the right magic words about Israel. That's how screwed up our world is people really don't understand that this is all just political trickery in order to elicit a response. And it's like people have they forget what happened even a week ago, and they're willing to dismiss behavior a week ago that was a lot more impactful because he went and faced down the student protesters. And our biggest priority as conservatives is to own the libs, and he went to Colombia and he owned the libs. Okay, so stupid.
Their tax dollars because the man is an insane heretic as far as I'm concerned. But if you're watching all of this unfold like me, you're probably thinking, well, that's no surprise. The people in DC absolutely hate this country and their constituents and have no interest representing the people who vote for them, and would rather instead show favor to foreign interests overseas so they can virtue signal to their DC friends, and also perhaps, let's be real, get some kickbacks in the process from the military industrial complex. Yeah, all of that, it's not new. I get you. But what has surprised me, what has frankly shocked me, is the willingness of some people in the media, supposedly conservative media, to get on board with this DC bipartisan swamp agenda. And I am, of course, referring mainly to none other than Ben Shapiro. Because before this bill actually got to a vote, while it seems like almost everyone in the American public was voicing how ridiculous this spending was, considering all of the problems we have going on domestically, Ben Shapiro was out here basically playing PR for this terrible bill. Yeah, the man dedicated an entire segment of his show trying to defend why spending tens of billions of dollars overseas is actually in America's best interest. We're going to look over the video itself, but here it says, foreign aid should be treated like defense spending. If it's good for U.S. interests, it's worthwhile. Strong, robust allies are in America's interest. Someone should explain why it is in America's interest to cut off aid such that Russia overruns Ukraine and Iran dominates the Middle East. Okay, so we are going to look at this video. We're going to examine what Ben said, but for context, anytime Ben Shapiro talks about America's interests, especially in the realm of foreign policy and the global stage, I think it's kind of relevant for us to be reminded how Ben Shapiro views, in his own words, his loyalty toward the United States.
One day you will have to flee the United States.
I mean, I think that every Jew throughout world history who has a brain and knows history has always wondered if a country that is not a Jewish state is going to eternally provide them security guarantees and full citizenship. Of course, I mean that's I think to think that that's why the existence of the state of Israel is the single greatest guarantor of my loyalty to the United States, frankly. Right, because Israel exists, that means the United States is going to be a more welcoming place for me because Israel is there as a backstop in case anything should go wrong.
So I know I might be labeled anti-Semitic for merely playing Ben Shapiro's own words, but to be clear, what he said in that clip is essentially that he cannot be sure that America, the country that he says he loves so much, will be a safe place for him and his family. And so really the best guarantor of his loyalty to America is the fact that Israel exists as a backup plan for him and his family to go to if anything should go wrong with America. That's not me trying to play into so-called anti-Semitic.
Why doesn't Ben Shapiro just move to Israel already? Honest to God. Why doesn't the entire Daily Wire outlet just move to goddamn Israel already? Why did they even bother moving to Nashville? They could have just gone to effing Israel. Can we start a deport Ben Shapiro campaign or something? Maybe I should put that on a t-shirt. Deport Ben Shapiro with a giant fucking Israeli flag.
Tropes or anything like that. That is literally Ben Shapiro's opinion that he just expressed in a public forum. With that in mind, is it really that crazy to question whether maybe your definition, gentle viewer, of America's interests may be a little bit different than Ben Shapiro's definition of America's interests? Because after all, once more, according to Ben Shapiro, best guarantor of Benny's loyalty to America is Israel. But with that in mind, let's see what Ben Shapiro's logical and rational opinion of this bill is that once more sends tens of billions of dollars toward Israel.
World War II, the United States effectively single-handedly rebuilt Europe with the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that's been said.
Hang on. Can we start a divest from the Daily Wire campaign? Can we do that? Why haven't Groypers? Why haven't you guys? This has alliteration and everything, Groypers. You need to tell Nick to do this. Can you start some sort of divest from the Daily Wire campaign to play on this college student divestment protest? Like, why not? It's an opportunity. It's got good alliteration. Divest Daily Wire hashtag. Like, you guys can come up with something better if you want, but like, why haven't the Groypers started a divest from the Daily Wire campaign? Missed opportunity, Nick. Come on, Groypers. We believe in you, Groypers. Groypers, this has everything you want. It has Ben Shapiro. It has the Daily Wire. This is like Nick's nemesis. You have to do. I can't do this, Groypers. This is your game. You have to do this. This is Nick Fuentes' greatest nemesis. There's a massive nationwide divestment campaign going on right now. Groypers, if you don't do this, I don't know if I can go to Afpac. I don't know if I can believe in you anymore, okay?
By a lot of people on the Republican side of the aisle about foreign aid is that all foreign aid is somehow bad. All foreign aid is somehow terrible and useless, and worse than useless, counterproductive, because we're not spending it at home. We shouldn't be spending it at all. This is insanely short-sighted.
I find it really interesting and frankly funny to listen to the way that Ben Shapiro talks about government spending when it comes to domestic issues versus foreign issues. Because as someone who listened to Ben Shapiro for years and years, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but I believe that his opinion on government spending, at least when it comes to Americans and, stuff in America, is that number one, government spending is hugely inefficient. And that number two, government spending with the aim of redistribution of wealth against people's wills is actually immoral. And number three, when it comes to things that, people may acknowledge would be good to have, that largely the private sector rather than the public sector should be left responsible for it. Those are boilerplate conservative talking points. I largely agree with them, but it seems like Ben Shapiro's opinion is basically the exact opposite when it comes to foreign aid. Don't believe me? Let's listen.
Because there are two ways in reality that we spend our defense money. One is on actual defense, meaning like creating F-35s and F-22s and creating aircraft carriers and submarines. The other way that we provide for our national defense is by strengthening our allies. And when our allies are not strong, we have to step in and we have to take the lead. It turns out that is a lot more expensive. Allies who are unable to defend themselves lead to enemies who are able to take advantage of that, thus threatening American interests and forcing American involvement. This has happened over and over and over in American history. When our allies are not strong enough, the United States ends up taking a lead role in areas we have no interest in being. This is why it is worthwhile for the United States to provide a pittance to many countries.
Okay, so this argument is one I hear from neocons all the time. And by the way, make no mistake, Ben Shapiro, he is a neoconservative. There's really never been a military action in the Middle East that he hasn't supported, at least that I'm aware of. And he was a huge supporter of the Iraq war. But it's this idea that actually foreign aid, including military aid to other countries, our allies, is actually the cheaper option. Because actually, if we don't strengthen our allies, that means that there's the possibility that the United States directly might have to engage with our enemies instead of letting our allies take care of them. Here's the thing, I could maybe buy into this line of thinking if it weren't for the objective fact that most of the neoconservative agenda has actually been making enemies out of countries that might otherwise be our allies. You can't claim that, this is just to keep us safe and protect us from enemies when you've spent the past generation, if not longer, making those countries into enemies. Israel is a great example of this. We often hear that we need to support Israel because they're the only country that's friendly to us in the Middle East.
Everyone hates
if you actually listen to why there's a lot of negative sentiment toward America in the Middle East, I think of a lot of it revolves around American support for Israel, especially how much of that military aid toward Israel ends up going to blowing up Muslims. I'm no fan of Wahhabists. I'm no fan of Islamist militants. However, I think it's also fair to say that there is this phenomenon called blowback that even the CIA acknowledges. People like Ben Shapiro could say, we have to help Israel fight the terrorists. Otherwise, America will have to fight them directly. Perhaps we take a step back and ask why these people have negative feelings toward America in the first place. I'll see.
If Lauren Chen keeps doing this, man, she's going to get herself in trouble. I I really hope I'm sure she understands that. She's a very, very, very smart woman. I'm positive she understands that, but this is an incredibly base take from Lauren Chen that in order to solve all of our problems with all of the Middle Eastern countries, literally all we have to do is stop supporting Israel. And that, I mean, I'm sure it won't clear up every problem overnight, but like, is she wrong? Like, I mean, truly, like, is this? I don't think this is actually wrong. If we just like stopped funding Israel, which we shouldn't really be doing anyway, because unlike what Ben Shapiro wants you to believe, Israel is actually not America. So if we just stop funding them, would that kind of clear up a lot of the problems, because our money would no longer be being used to like bomb Muslim countries and kill Muslims? Is this like the biggest win that could ever be had?
Save you some time. No, it's not because they hate us for our freedoms.
Yeah, what
How
happened to
about we
that?
examine American actions that have led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent Arabs over the past several conflicts in the region. And you know what? It is a similar case with Russia. Now, I hear you guys like, oh, we shouldn't be allied with Russia because they don't have real democracy. He's a strong man. Okay, you don't have to love Russia to not want to fund a conflict against them. I don't care what MSNBC tells you. That's actually a very reasonable position to have. But what people don't understand is that any criticism of the Russian government you may have is equally valid against the Ukrainian government. No, Ukraine is not some bastion of democracy and transparent government in Eastern Europe. Far from it. It is a corrupt state. Of course it is. Who knows how many billions of dollars that Americans have sent overseas have actually made it to the conflict versus just being pocketed by Ukrainian politicians. And obviously, I don't think there will ever be a world where the US and Russia will be buddy-buddy like the US and Canada or the US and Great Britain. However, that doesn't mean that the only way forward with American-Russian relations is this outright hostility and basically funding a proxy war. People like Ben Shapiro, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like overly critical or rude here, but they are incapable of analyzing a situation from a new perspective. He is so
I mean, this probably has to do with Ben Shapiro obviously and clearly being massively sexually repressed, which is a lesson for you groypers. Listen, I'm about to give the groypers a piece of sage advice. I know they're here because I just know, like, when anytime you put Nick's name in a stream, it like sends up the bat signal or the frog signal, and the groypers all arrive. So groypers, I want to take this opportunity to give you a piece of sage advice. Brucey is correct. Ben gets off on bombing and suffering. He literally had to hide his chubby when he watched Crowder get waterboarded. He's a sadist. Correct. But I'm going to say that maybe being so sexually repressed is what made him this way. And so it's not really good to be sexually repressed. And so incels, groypers, I know you pride yourself on being incels, and I know you don't like girls and you think it's wrong to fornicate, but sexual repression can screw you up, okay? It really can. It's okay to sleep with girls. Like, they're not going to give you cooties. You might even have fun. It's okay. And you're going to be much more well-adjusted. And I promise you, you can all get girls. I know you think you can't, but it's mostly because you don't leave your computer, okay? You can go out into the real world. You can meet girls in the real world. And it might be hard at first because sometimes you have to practice talking to girls because you're not going to know how to do it right away. And I get that. But, like, if you practice, and just don't be afraid of being told no. Everyone gets told no in life. It's no big deal. You move on to the next. Like, it's not the end of the world. But, like, just practice talking to girls and you're going to get better at it. And then you're going to find a girlfriend, and then you're going to get laid, and it's going to be awesome. And you're not going to be sexually repressed anymore. And you're going to feel a lot better, and you're going to feel more manly, and you're going to feel more proud of yourself, and you're going to have more confidence. And you might even get laid more than once, groypers. You might get laid as like 2, 3, 4, 7, 10 times. Like, it might just keep going, but you might even end up marrying this girl. If you want to marry the girl before you sleep with her, that's fine too. I mean, it takes a little bit longer, but you can do that if you want to. I'm just saying that sexual repression is not a good thing, and that fornication can sometimes be beneficial.
trench of like, oh, Russia bad, Russia enemy. Well, like, yes, we have to fight them forever. Like, how about no? How about we acknowledge the fact that foreign policy interests can change? Relationships between countries can and should improve over time. Vladimir Putin, for his part, despite all of his weaknesses, he has many times throughout history expressed a willingness to work with the West. And each and every time, guess what? It's been the West that has shooed him away. But I digress. I can already tell this is going to be a longer video. Let's continue.
Talking in raw terms, yes, some of this is a lot of money in raw terms. When you're talking about the federal budget of the United States, let us be clear. Foreign aid represents well under 1% of the federal budget nearly every year. One of the things that I've been noticing is a lot of the people who I see screaming to the heavens about the cost of foreign aid. Oh my God, I can't believe how much this is costing. I get the feeling that you have a different set of priorities for many of you. There's some people who are consistent libertarians. There's some people who say the government shouldn't be spending on Social Security, and the government shouldn't be spending on disability, and the government shouldn't be spending on welfare, and the government should not be spending on foreign aid. That is at least a consistent position. I think it's wrongheaded because, again, I think that America's foreign policy interests require that we have strong allies who eventually will be able to take care of themselves. The goal of foreign aid, by the way, should be eventually to get other countries off our foreign aid.
Is that the goal with Israel as well, Ben? Because how many generations, how many decades has America been sending foreign aid over there for? Quite a while. I don't really hear people like Ben Shapiro ever discuss any plans for that aid to stop forever. Yes,
Fair
here we
point.
go. The idea that, well, foreign aid is such a small percent of the budget. Why does it really matter at all? That's ridiculous. Every single cent of taxpayer money that the U.S. government is spending.
We just spent the last 2 days on my spy stream watching a training from the California community colleges called Queer Liberation, where they were talking about like abolishing the gender binary and using pronouns and autism and queer stuff and like queering autistic people and all this stuff. And it was like this crazy taxpayer funded thing. And then we found out that it was funded because $10 million got passed in the California state government to specifically fund this queer liberation program that's being piped into every single community college in the state of California. And I just have to say, would Ben Shapiro say, you know, it's that $10 million, it's a really small part of California's budget. And so I just don't see the problem with funding this queer liberation thing that's being piped into every single community college in California, because like it's like just a tiny piece of the budget. That's essentially the argument that Ben Shapiro is making. He's like, you know, maybe this is outside my principles, but it's just a little bit of the budget. So does it really matter? Can't we just overlook it? Let me see, Naruto. If TikTok gets banned, well, Biden already signed the bill. TikTok is getting banned unless they sell it. Then libs of yo. Did Naruto just did he just find a light, a shining light of joy in the banning of TikTok, which is a Trojan horse bill and is stupid? But like, is there, since Biden's already, like, you know, you can always look at things as either good or bad, right? Biden signing the banning TikTok bill is bad. It's bad for any number of reasons. However, is this going to put libs of TikTok out of a job? Because that might actually be a really beneficial thing, because all libs of TikTok really posts is clickbait content that usually is not hinged into reality of what's actually going on in the world, because those videos aren't posted to show what's really going on in the world. Those videos are posted to go viral on TikTok. So they say the most outlandish things, then you actually look into it and there's no evidence of that actually happening, or it's like in onesie and twosie cases, but it's not like a mass thing. And so libs of TikTok is just clickbait bullshit that is giving conservatives completely the wrong idea about what's happening in schools, completely the wrong idea about what's actually important. And if libs of TikTok actually just went away, that would be a really good thing in terms of teaching the right what is going on and what they need to be focused on. So there's always a benefit to these things, I suppose. There's always an upside.
Should come under the harshest of scrutinies, including foreign aid, especially when it's tens of billions of dollars. This idea that the American government is just entitled to the money, and it's not really even that much,
maybe.
so why do you care? This is a purely leftist talking point that I'm shocked. I am frankly shocked to see someone like Ben Shapiro, who is supposedly this fiscal conservative, actually express. And that brings us to his next point that, oh, unless you're uniformly against government spending when it comes to things like Social Security or disability payments, then you don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to foreign aid. No, Ben, no, I'm sorry. Don't get me wrong. I am skeptical of any and all government spending, but I still think there is room for someone to be genuine and say, hey, maybe we don't spend foreign aid money, but also then maybe if the government should be spending money, it should be to take care of Americans. That is a perfectly rational and consistent position. And I hope we see how slippery Ben Shapiro is being here, by the way, that unless you also support, all of this domestic spending, then you can't really say we shouldn't spend money overseas. You can be 100% America first and believe that it is one issue, one discussion for America to spend money on its own citizens and a totally different discussion for America to spend money on not its citizens. Because guess what, Ben Shapiro, maybe you've forgotten this, but just because you happen to be really tight with Israel, I don't know if you're actually a citizen of there, but you definitely have the right of return there. That doesn't mean the same is true for any or all other.
Oh my God. That was so slick by Lauren Chen. Holy shit. I don't know if you're actually a citizen of there, Ben. Let's just watch that again. That was great. Lauren Chen, based queen.
You can be 100% America first and believe that it is one issue, one discussion for America to spend money on its own citizens and a totally different discussion for America to spend money on not its citizens. Because guess what, Ben Shapiro, maybe you've forgotten this, but just because you happen to be really tight with Israel, I don't know if you're actually a citizen of there, but you definitely have the right of return there. That doesn't mean the same is true for any or all other Americans, right? For a lot of Americans, they really are just Americans. It's the only country that they have. And no, they don't have the same vested interests in countries that are across the ocean.
Fully in favor of that sort of planning. When it comes to emergency foreign aid, that is a bit of a different story. However, there are a group of people in the Republican Party who are basically taking the view that foreign aid is uniquely a bad spend, that is really where we're wasting taxpayer dollars. I don't believe you that this is about fiscal responsibility. I just don't. When you continue to vote in favor of $5, $6, $7 trillion budgets every single year, but here is where you start to pinch the pennies, I start to get a little suspicious.
Again, I'm not in favor of those huge spending bills, definitely not. But still, I think it is reasonable for maybe a Republican to say, yeah, spending money on our own people, on our own retail.
Yep. Deadpool Kid is right. The Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro want to ignore the fact that, normal people have trouble paying their bills. Have you guys been to Five Guys lately? Do you know how much a cheeseburger and fries costs at Five Guys now? And I know it's a stupid example, but it's one of those things where, I literally cannot believe how much money I need to pay at Five Guys to get a cheeseburger and a hot dog. And yeah, I could just make it myself, but that's not the point. It is ridiculous right now, man. But they don't care because they're rich and they're going to stay rich unless the Groypers do a massive divest from the Daily Wire campaign, which they absolutely should do.
Retirees, on our own, veterans, disabled people, whatever, is one thing. Foreign countries is another. Because guess what, Ben? The American government has absolutely no obligations, none whatsoever, to foreign countries. Their obligations strictly and exclusively are to Americans. And I also say the people in Congress who are voting for these different bills, yeah, their constituents are Americans. Not Ukrainians, not Israelis. Anyway, you guys can watch that segment from Ben Shapiro in its entirety. But something and someone else I wanted to highlight in this video that I very much believe is representative of the big con establishment viewpoint when it comes to a lot of these issues, these foreign policy issues, is Jeremy Boring, who, if you're not familiar with, he is the CEO of the Daily Wire, and I believe Ben Shapiro's best friend. Now, Jeremy Boring, for his part, he's been getting some flack on X
this was
for a post
crazy.
which read, people who deny the moon landing or suggest America is evil for its use of atomic weapons against Imperial Japan, or who say that George Bush was behind 9/11, actually hate this country. And for people who are wondering where is this coming from, I believe this post was a subtweet toward Tucker Carlson, who was was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and basically the two of them were discussing many issues, including Tucker's disapproval of neoconservatism as an operating force and him being critical of some of the actions that America took during World War II. I do plan on doing an entirely separate video responding and going over to some of the things that Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson said, because I thought that was a really interesting interview. But for now, I think it's just pretty clear that the Daily Wire and Tucker Carlson represent two very distinct segments of the population who identifies as right-wing or conservative. Tucker Carlson is a populist. He is a dissident. He is very anti-establishment and very critical of America's institutions. Compare that to the Daily Wire. And frankly, I'm not going to say they don't criticize the government. They do, but ultimately at their core, they still very much believe that the establishment, the status quo is the best way. And they believe that so intrinsically that they'll even go so far as to say that if you question the establishment, you're actually unpatriotic. You actually hate America. That is the root of what Jeremy's tweet was about. And I want to point out here that Jeremy doesn't just say, oh, if you suggest the moon landing was fake, you're wrong, you're silly, you're misinformed. He doesn't just say, oh, if you think Bush did 9/11, you're actually just a conspiracy theorist. No,
Israel did 9/11.
You hate America. Jeremy.
Obviously,
that's
not true, YouTube.
There are over a million reasons that I love America. I love America for the hospitality and kindness of Americans. I love America for the opportunity that it offers everybody, people from different backgrounds, people from different income levels. America, more so than any other country, I feel, is the place where you truly get to stand on your own merit and succeed or fail by your own design. I also love America's history, the American legacy of fighting for freedom. There are so many things I love about America. The decisions of American politicians, who, by the way, are now dead and not even in office, frankly, I don't count those among the things that I love about this great country. And I don't know. I don't think it's really fair to say that I hate America in light of that. And here's the thing, the people at the Daily Wire, they can paint themselves as being anti-establishment all they want, the dissidents, the truth speakers, but ultimately this is the opinion that they have. And by the way, Bitcon's inherent trust in the government is exactly why people like Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring were also bamboozled by the jab, by the COVID jab. They trusted the science that we knew was skeptical, but they were so invested in believing, well, the government is right, they wouldn't lie to me, that they fell for one of the biggest lies in our generation.
Yeah, for real.
But in any case, that's basically all I have to say for now. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
All right. Based Lauren Chen. Let's see. I don't know that I want to watch that other video right now, just because we have a longer Nick episode to get to. I just want to see what she posted. Let's see. It was this one. Yeah, I don't want to watch that one right now. Number two, maybe we'll watch it later. This morning's video, she kept dragging Ben Shapiro over it. Well, maybe I'll watch it later. But I do want to get to Nick, because there's a lot of Nick to get to, because I just have the show pulled up. I don't even know when he started talking about it. I just want to do a couple of super chats real quick before we get to Nick. And Groypers especially, now would be a great time for you guys to mount the like button for me, because the more you guys like this video, the more YouTube will recommend it to other people, so other people can come in and enjoy Nick through this perspective. Maybe they aren't going to go to Rumble or Cozy and watch Nick on his own, but if you guys like the video, that's going to make sure that more people actually see the video. So that would be great. I'm going to be nice. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to call him gay or anything. Let's see. Deadpool Kid says, plus they got to keep an eye on their war stocks. Bada bing, bada boom. Exactly. Rottweiler says, to be fair, the bill was drafted by neocon boomers who probably don't even know libs of TikTok. The TikTok ban was done to try to appease No, the TikTok ban was done because Israel was pissed off that all of these videos were going viral on TikTok, that were getting significantly more coverage than anything on the news, that were pro-Palestine. That's why Israel got banned. They want to be able to sell TikTok to an American company that will censor the pro-Palestinian content, because it was just getting a little too out of control. All right. We are going to be watching Nick Fuentes. We're going to be watching his show from yesterday. I don't really know what he says in this, so I'm just going to react like how I'm going to react, all right? Let's see.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back with you
Big
here
show.
tonight on Wednesday.
Big
we have
show.
a lot to talk about tonight. Lots to get into. Big show. Our featured story tonight, yes, we're finally talking about the massive protests happening.
Nick is
at
looking very
college
handsome with the
campuses
mustache,
across the
I will say.
country. Pro-Palestine,
Okay, Ty. Not
anti-Israel
great, Ty.
protests, which
Okay.
have paralyzed campuses from California to New York. And it seems like they're only getting worse or better, depending on your perspective. And what started at Columbia University is now happening everywhere in America, and there are more universities every day. We have been trying to talk about this for a long time, but just haven't gotten to it so far. Last week, it was only Columbia University and a handful of
I'm going to do a
others
poll
in
on
New
Nick's
England.
mustache to
And
see where
now
you guys
it's
stand
in
on it.
California, Ohio, Michigan, and Texas. And the biggest development is what is happening in Texas today. There was a massive pro-Palestine protest at UT Austin, and it was so bad that the governor of Texas has commented on it and has called for the National Guard to disperse the protests.
I'm not sure that's an
because
accident.
apparently anti-Semitism is against the law in Texas. And what is anti-Semitism? Well, it's whatever the Jews want it to be. Whenever you criticize them, whenever you criticize Israel, that's anti-Semitism.
Hang on. What are you talking about? What is I don't even know what chaotic truth is. What are you talking about?
You can't think it, say it, protest, write it. It's illegal in Republican states because Republicans are controlled by Israel. So we'll talk about all that. We'll get into these protests. It's a huge deal, and nobody's talking about it. And nobody on the right is talking about it. But this is a seriously big deal. This is a nationwide, grassroots, organic, mass mobilization.
Okay, I want to emphasize something because Nick seems to understand this too. He just said this is like an organic, grassroots, organized thing. That's true, guys. I've been seeing a lot of conservatives online talking about like who's funding this, who's funding, and they're trying to insinuate it's some Soros thing. Listen, man, I've been following some of the groups involved in this that are helping to organize it for a while. These groups are self-funded. They fund what they're doing through membership dues, through events, and through book publishing. And maybe a couple other things as well, but those are the main sources of the revolutionary socialist groups' money. They run events all the time. They do trainings, they do classes, people make donations for those events. A lot of them are actual book publishers, and socialist book publishing is like an insular system, so they're always selling to other socialists and they have like a ready built-in market for it. And then we know the Revolutionary Communists of America requires their members to donate 1 day's pay per month as part of their membership dues. So these groups are funded, but it's not from like the Soros places like you think they are. Lauren Chen gives no Fs anymore. Exactly. Now, the reason I bring this up is that self-funded groups are the most dangerous groups because they don't answer to anyone. They can do what they want. And we know that the Party for Socialism and Liberation has been planning this for at least 2 years, because that video I found of them last November was from 1 year prior in November 2022. So Nick is right. It's organic and it's grassroots.
Against America's support for Israel. If you're America first, why aren't you supporting this? I know that most of the protesters are not protesting as nationalists or right-wingers. It doesn't matter.
Listen, I don't know what game you're playing, but I don't know what the Chaotic Truth Live is. So if you keep spamming my chat with things that I have no idea about because you want to get a screenshot or something, I'm going to end up banning you. So I don't know who you are. I've never seen you here before. I don't know what the Chaotic Truth is. Stop spamming my chat.
America is controlled by Israel. There is mass mobilization against Israel. Anyone who is America first has to support this. You don't have to support their reasons why. You have to support that it is happening. And it may soon become a flashpoint. And I talked last week about this. These protests in Colombia, dispersed by police, or there's a negotiation about this. It's the first time it's happened since the Vietnam War. They were writing about this. I think I mentioned it on the show middle of last week. These are the first time you've had protests like this at Colombia since Vietnam, since the 70s.
It's also the first time, and I'm curious if Nick knows this. All right, that person is getting banned from my chat. It's also the first time since 1968 that Colombia has allowed the New York City Police Department on their campus. And so this is another big deal. And I'll be actually really impressed if Nick knows this detail, because when Colombia allowed the NYPD on their campus the other day to try to disperse the students, that was the first time since 1968 that had happened, and that really pissed the students off. And that was the reason the whole thing exploded, was the students were so pissed off at the cops, because, as a reminder for people who don't watch Socialism with me, prison abolition, police abolition, defunding the police, this is like the number one far left issue, because the socialist left believe that the police are the managers of private property. Abolishing private property, which is capitalism, is the number one goal of the left. And they believe that in order to achieve their goal of abolishing capitalism, they need to abolish the police. So there is like no bigger overt enemy that the far left has than the police. And so to be on a uber woke college campus, because Columbia University is the most woke university in the country by far, to be on that campus and to be protesting, and which is like a tradition, something that they take pride in at Columbia, and to have the New York City Police Department called on you, this is like the biggest mistake that Columbia's president made in this whole thing. It's what made the situation completely worse. There's no good way out of this now. And had she just kind of let it go and let the students say what they wanted to say without quite frankly, her getting called in front of Congress is probably the thing that messed all this up, because it just happened at the same time, because she needed to look like a leader by dispersing the protest. But honestly, if she had just left it alone and everyone had kind of ignored them, it probably would have fizzled out by now. But no, because she called the cops, that blew up it literally quadrupled the size of the damn protest. That was mistake number one, because it hadn't happened since the 60s, and they were already really pissed off.
And of course,
I'll show whoever the fuck I want. You don't have to be here.
people understand the significance of that. It was partially because of the mass mobilization of students, as well as others, that eventually brought an end to the Vietnam War, against the wishes of the national security state. Something similar may be afoot here. And even if it does not go in that direction, ultimately, it is certainly raising the consciousness that this is a occupied country. So we'll get into all that. We'll talk about the whole story. We're not even going to cover anything else tonight because there's really nothing else going on. But it's going to be a great show, probably a landmark show, because this is a huge deal. This whole period is such a huge deal. Last thing I'll say, then we'll get into it. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I think I said this more or less on the show at sometime in the past. But it's really incredible that for the past 7 months, this has been an earth-shattering political realignment, a seismic political realignment in America. What Israel is doing in Gaza has shaken to the core the political mandate for America's unconditional, sustained military, diplomatic, financial support for the state of Israel. It has shaken it to its core. And that's what we want. It is so entrenched, so deeply, it pervades so much of everything, it has to be shaken. We have to shake it up so that it can be unrooted, so that it can be displaced. And that's exactly what has been going on. And this is brought to you by thousands, millions of Palestinians suffering every day, live on TV, for the entire planet to watch as Israel mercilessly kills them. And this has shaken that consensus in virtually every sector of society, on campuses, at Google, inside the executive branch, inside Congress, even within the GOP. People like Candace Owens or Justin Amash, even Tucker Carlson talking about how they treat Christians. It has been going on for 7 months. And as I said, it is struck at the heart of the political mandate for America to support Israel. And where are the America Firsters talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
Where is Matt Walsh? Where is John Doyle? Where is Tucker Carlson? Where are these people? I'm sorry, if not now, then when? If not under these circumstances.
Why did Elon Musk yesterday retweet a speech from Bibi Netanyahu? This really pissed me off when I saw it. I was like, bro, I didn't watch the speech. I know some people did, but like, I was like, the very first thing I saw in the caption was Bibi Netanyahu talking about how anti-Semitism is taking over all college campuses, which isn't even happening. That's not real. Why is Elon Musk tweeting that? I'm not saying ban it off the platform. I'm just saying that Elon Musk doesn't need to like co-sign Bibi Netanyahu.
Then under which circumstances will it be appropriate and will it be opportune or time for people to start to talk about the truth, which is that this country is occupied and controlled by Jews and Israel? When? If not now, then when? Like I said, it has been going on for 7 months that the entire world, but particularly America, has begun to wake up to what is happening. The left is talking about it. The Young Turks are talking about it. Google employees and college students are talking about it. But apparently it's not good enough for people that say they're infiltrating or doing some other thing. It's being laid bare that the GOP is a front for Israel. It's being laid bare that the American government is completely infiltrated and answers to Israel.
Yep.
But that isn't good enough for certain people to finally start to talk about it. They want to talk about something else. I don't know what else there is to talk about. Every day on the show, the biggest things for the past 7 months have had a direct correlation. They lead right back to the Jewish occupation of America. Elon Musk and Twitter beginning to censor again. The protests at Columbia, the protest at Google, the Biden administration's collapsing support in the youth demographic and protest votes in Michigan. What's going on with Iran and Israel? What's going on in Congress? The battle over the aid for Ukraine. It all goes right back to this.
The very first thing that Joe Biden said in his State of the Union was, we have to support Israel. In the State of the goddamn Union.
And people have been obstinately silent about it
Yo,
for 7 months on
I
the
bet
right.
it does feel good, man.
Because they are either paid, their silence has been bought by Zionists, Zionist Jews, or they have been tricked. They have become complacent, or they have been completely co-opted, and they no longer work for America. But it's totally outrageous. The good news is that we're evolving past the need for these people. We don't need people that are going to lie or lie by omission.
Bro, I may not be the best libertarian when it comes to reciting libertarian philosophy, but what I do know for absolute certain is that you are not a libertarian if you support foreign aid. That is not a libertarian position in any way. You are not a libertarian if you support foreign aid. You are not a libertarian if you support intervention in foreign war. That is just completely antithetical. So don't come into my chat and tell me that we have any obligation to Israel at all.
Every day about something that is so glaringly obvious now, which is that the problem is not the Democrats, it's not the woke. It is that this country is controlled by Christ-hating, anti-Christ Jews that only care about Israel.
Well, that's going a little
That's
off
why
the
this
rails.
country's going to hell. Because the
Slightly.
people that run it don't care about it.
I
And
mean,
they're
he's not
Christian.
wrong, but
nobody wants to say that. And even the people that are going to flirt with it, well, they only want to come at it from the outskirts of the issue.
I don't
They wanna
co-sign the
talk
Christian
about
thing. I'm
Dresden,
sorry.
they
I
wanna
just
talk
don't. I'm
about
not a
other
Christian.
things.
I don't mind
Let's
if you're a
talk
Christian,
about
but I'm just not.
What's important, which is that we don't have American Christians running the country. We have Zionist Jews that only care about Israel. That's why they gave up on the border and the Ukraine aid, so that we can expedite more money to Israel, because that was the bigger priority than both of those things.
He's
put
not
together,
wrong.
obviously. So anyway, that's my challenge. Doyle, Walsh, Michael Knowles, even Candace Owens. Let's bring it.
Yo.
Let's be America first. Let's not just obviously ignore it in some cases or talk about it.
Nick probably agrees with most of the demands that the Columbia students have. I bet that's going to be his take. I bet he's on the side of the protesters. He agrees with their demands because Nick doesn't support Israel. I don't think he necessarily supports Palestine either, but if he had to choose between one of the two, I think he would pick Palestine because he doesn't want Palestinians to come to America, right? And so the only way to prevent Palestinians from coming to America is to keep them in Palestine. And so I think he would support that. But like, it would actually be interesting to see what happens. And I'm not saying I think this is going to happen because I don't, but Nick probably is extremely aligned with the Columbia protesters. I wonder how they would react.
Israel in a propositionally negative way. Let's talk about what's happening. Let's be right out with it. I don't want to hear any more cutesy stuff. It's just not good enough. The year is 2024. Okay, we're still in Iraq. We're still giving Israel the money. We're being dragged into a war with Iran. Let's do something and talk about it. If not now, then when? Our country's over. It's done. It was decades.
Why didn't Nick, do the Groypers know why didn't Nick debate that Rabbi Shmuley? I really wanted to see that. Does anyone have any insight as to why he didn't accept that invitation?
Too late, decades ago. And people still think that this is not yet the right time to start to tell the truth about what's really going on in the country. I don't understand the logic. So anyway, that's that. But we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about these protests. That's just to remind everybody this momentous time that we're living through right now. And it's in the most unlikely places that we're finding spokesmen on this issue. It's guys like Andrew Tate. It's guys like Jake Shields. It's guys like Lucas Gage, Keith Woods, people from different parts of the planet.
Oh, is that what he said? He still should have debated him. It would have been a great show.
Military, political commentators, Muslims, Christians, liberals. We need American patriots to stand up on this issue, not this nonsense, as I've been saying, not this nonsense. Well, I think we should just stay out of it. No, we need to bring America out of this occupation by Israel because we're not staying out of it. But anyway, we're going to dive in. Before we get into this story about Columbia and the protests, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on.
Okay, Nick.
If you're subscribed.
All right.
Guests. We've announced a couple of them already. Yesterday, we announced Lucas Gage. Today, Kyle Clifton. will both be there, but we're announcing special guests every day. I'll be giving the biggest AF speech ever. It's going to be
Talking about Afpac. I have to go. I
incredible.
fucking have to
So
go to Afpac. I have
make sure to check
I
it
have
out.
to.
With that out of the way,
It's probably a
we're gonna
bad idea,
dive
but I
in
really just
and
feel
we'll
like
talk all about
I can't say
Colombia.
no to this.
So yesterday, or rather, I think on Monday, I said that there are, on Monday, I think this is an interesting way to frame it. On Monday, I said that
You
we're
think
in
I have to go
World
to
War
Afpac,
III
Reagan?
already. We have entered this era of global conflict, and whether the United States has begun a shooting war with Russia or China yet is not really important. We're in a state of global conflict.
All right, we're changing our poll. 57% of you believe that Nick should indeed keep his mustache, which I think is the right decision. I think it looks very dapper on him. Next poll is going to be, should I go to Afpac?
Conflict has touched every corner of the globe, and we're on the cusp of multiple conflicts on just about every continent. And so we're in this era of global war, and it has been brought already to the shores of the United States in a few ways. And specifically as it pertains to the war in Gaza and the broader Middle East war, there's two main ways that it has affected the United States. And the first one we talked about on Monday, which was the foreign aid package. The second one, which we're going to talk about tonight, is these huge protests and the ongoing battle on campus. And the protests are only the latest installment in a long story here, and we'll get into that. I want to just recap briefly what I said on Monday, and I talked a little bit about this on Telegram as well. But as you may have heard, and if you caught the show on Monday, the U.S. Congress has just passed, and as of today, President Biden signed into law a $95 billion aid package that sends money to Ukraine, Israel.
Let's not pretend that Nick is above debating a rodeo clown if that rodeo clown will give him an audience. Let's not pretend we haven't seen that before. I think a debate between Nick and Rabbi Shmuley would be hilarious, and Nick would kick his ass. So I'm not saying I disagree with the notion that Shmuley is a rodeo clown. Obviously, he's a rodeo clown, but like, it would be amazing. Nick would do so good. Nick would be like, even people who might be Zionists think Rabbi Shmuley is a dick. And so it's like they'd have to be on Nick's side by default, which is going to make them feel uncomfortable. But then Nick could go in and drop truth bomb after truth bomb after truth bomb. It's just a missed opportunity. Everyone would watch it.
And Taiwan. I'm going to go over this very briefly. So if you watch the show on Monday, you've probably heard this before. But people need to understand just simply this about the foreign aid package. Remember that Republicans effectively shut down the government for 7 months because they wanted border security from the Democrats before they would give the Democrats more foreign aid to Ukraine. So for 7 months, Congress was shut down, and we were unable to pass appropriations, unable to pass aid for Israel or Taiwan, because the Democrats wouldn't budge without Ukraine aid and Republicans wouldn't budge without border security. And these are two things that Republicans campaigned on, which was auditing or restricting aid to Ukraine and using the power of Congress to secure the border. And Republicans insisted for all this time that either we would get no money for Ukraine, or if we did, we would have to get border security in exchange for it. And keep in mind, these are two detrimental issues. We've given hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine since the start of the war. They're losing badly. They're not going to recover territory, and they're not even going to be able to keep what they have. And everyone at this point recognizes that. But yet we're going to sign away $60 billion more dollars on top of the already massive pile that we've sent them. The other issue is the border. It is, without hyperbole, the worst border in the history of the United States. More illegals coming across than ever before, by far, on a day-by-day or month-by-month basis. It's completely overwhelmed public services in just about every major city. It's created a homelessness crisis, housing crisis, fiscal and debt crisis for the cities and states where they're being sent to. It's a total disaster. But Republicans gave up on both. They gave $60 billion more to Ukraine for the Democrats, and they completely surrendered on attempting to get a commitment to secure the border because Israel was attacked on Saturday, and Republicans wanted to get the money to them as quickly as possible. So think about that. And consider that Israel provoked the attack. Israel bombed Iran's embassy. Iran bombed Israel in retaliation, killing nobody. And this was a sufficient cause for Republicans to immediately, within 24 hours, abandon both other issues. They said, now that Israel is under attack, we got to get that aid to them. So that means we're going to give Biden all the money he wants for Ukraine, and we're just going to forget about the border because we need to get $30 billion to Israel stat. That's issue number one of how this war has been brought to America and how it's influencing things. Our Republicans can't secure the border because Israel is more important. Republicans cannot prevent money being sent to Ukraine, which you might as well light it on fire, because Israel is more important. And I said this on my Telegram channel earlier today. This is something people need to keep in mind. Zionists are not our allies, ever. Jews are rarely, with a handful of exceptions, ever our allies in politics because they only care about themselves and Israel.
I wouldn't say that of all
and
Jews.
Here is a perfect demonstration of that. All these Republicans in Congress campaign on a number of issues. They'll say they support Trump, and they'll say they support a secure border, and they'll say they support a low-tax business environment. But they also, to a man or woman, every single one of them say they support Israel. And we, as conservatives or nationalists, find that we agree more with Republicans than Democrats. When we hear Republicans say they want to secure the border, or they want to hold Biden accountable, or they want to cut the deficit, we say we agree with those things, so we vote for them.
Nick is setting it up to say he agrees with the protesters.
But the one thing, the main thing, is that they all support Israel. And a lot of people's conception of this is they see that and they say, well, I don't agree with them on that part. I don't agree with them on that one thing. But I agree with the Republicans more than the Democrats on the 9 out of 10 other things. So I'll vote for them. So those are my people. Here's the problem. When Israel is under attack, those 9 other things go out the window. We don't care about those anymore. When Robert Kraft makes the call, when Sheldon Adelson makes the call, when Netanyahu or Bill Ackman make the call, Republicans pick up. And they drop the border, and they drop the Ukraine aid, and they drop the deficit cuts, and they drop the 45,000 hours of tapes on January 6th so that we can get $30 billion to Israel. And you can never forget that if someone is a Zionist, it's because they're being paid or they're Jewish. And if someone's being paid or they're Jewish, then that means the only thing that they really care about is supporting Israel. They will compromise everything else. Everything else. And that's, in a sense, then the only thing that matters. We elect them because they promised to secure the border. We elect them. They promised to stop giving money to Ukraine. But when Israel is under attack, they'll compromise all of it for the one thing, that one priority, that 1 out of 10 things that maybe we're not thrilled about, which is to send money to Israel. And that is always how it will be. That is always how it has been for decades of Jewish Zionists controlling the Republican Party and the conservative movement. Ben Shapiro, Gad Saad, Brett Stevens, they're all Jewish Zionist
Gad
conservatives.
Saad,
they
man.
have all said
I had forgot. Oh, he is another one that's lost his mind. All of them. It's just been like, I mean, it was so revealing after October 7th who was authentic and who was a Zionist shill, essentially. And it was it's like you have to go through a process of mourning with some of these people. And like, I wasn't the biggest fan of a lot of them, to be honest. And I kind of moved on from a lot of it. But there were people that I just really didn't expect to go full on Zionist that did. And there were people that I didn't really particularly have like a good relationship with before. But after that, and it was like we all saw each other and we were like, oh shit, we're like, we might disagree on things. We're on the same team. They are the enemy.
Only care about the West insofar as the West supports Israel. If the West didn't support Israel, they wouldn't support the West. So are they our allies? Are they a friend? Are they a friend to America? Are they a friend to Western civilization? No. And not only is the answer no, they are the enemy of Western civilization because they're here, they have power, they wield it, but they wield it on behalf of a foreign country and a foreign people, the only country they care about. It will never work that way. We will always come second. That's why the show is called America First, because right now we always come second, even if we're lucky. We come second at the most on a good day, after Israel is taken care of, after the Jews are taken care of. If TikTok is not pro-Israel enough, we can't have it. We come second. If securing the border gets in the way of Mike Johnson giving Israel $30 billion, we don't get a secure border. We come second. Israel gets taken care of first. If we want to prevent the government from sending $60 billion to Ukraine, we don't get it. Israel has to be taken care of first.
I mean, he's not
Our
wrong.
concern about that comes second.
Factually, these things did happen
after Israel gets the money it needs. It will never work for us. It will always be this way as long as Jewish Zionists pull the strings with their money, with their influence, or because they're in power by their ethnicity. So we're not obsessed. I'm not obsessed with Jews or hating them or anything like that. But it's recognizing that as a system, this doesn't work. We need Americans in charge so that when there's a discussion about Israel aid and the border and other things, the border gets taken care of first. We need that 1 out of 10 things to be white people or Americans or Jesus Christ, not Israel and the Jews. I think that's a fair point based on a very recent and undeniable example. So that's number one. We covered that on Monday, but I wanted to bring that home a little bit and show people that that's how it works. That's the true meaning of America First. They will compromise everything else, and they have, and they always will. The one thing that cannot be touched, the one thing that is considered sacrosanct, that cannot be blasphemed, questioned, denied,
crazy
debated,
idea,
is that this is a place that works for Israel. Everything else can be debated. Gay people doing surrogacy like Dave Rubin and Guy Benson, well, that's a debate. Transsexuals and gender reassignment surgery on kids, well, that's a discussion. Socialism or capitalism, exploitative vulture capitalism, it's all a debate. But giving Israel whatever it needs is not subject to debate or discussion. Criticizing Jews or Israel is considered blasphemous.
He's right.
Just not even on the table. And that's because they run it. And it shouldn't
He's
be
right. Listen, man, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again just for people who haven't heard it before. I'll tell you what, when I started bantering with Nick on Twitter, like after October 7th, it was just for fun. I didn't really think that much of it. It was just like, it was like to kill time, right? But let me tell you what, in the 4 years that I've been in this game, I have never seen a reaction like me bantering with Nick on Twitter and then Nick say like one time saying like a nice thing about me on his show. My inbox was filled with people I hadn't heard from in like a long time, people who, quite frankly, have never actually done me any favors. And they were all in my inbox going, how dare you talk to Nick Fuentes? Why are you talking to Nick Fuentes? What's going on with you and Nick Fuentes? It was just like, I was like, holy shit. Like, I never even said I agreed with the kid on 100% of things. I was literally just bantering with him on Twitter for fun, and you guys are all losing your shit. It was just like, so it was like hit me in the face like, what is going on? You are not allowed to, like, I don't even share Nick's opinion on a lot of things. But even just getting close to him, and I'm not even that close. I'm not a griper. I'm not doing any of that. I'm barely even thinking about going to Afpac. Like, you get within a mile of him and it's like the goddamn wall comes down. And that was very telling.
It should be the reverse. It should be supporting America is like that, or supporting Jesus should be like that. Anyway, that's that. I want to move on. I want to get into the protests, which, to that end, this second aspect of the home front Gaza war is that there has been this battle on the college campuses. And right now,
Finally,
the big story is that a movement which began at the Columbia University campus in New York has now spread across the entire country. And students from coast to coast are taking over their campuses, protesting America's support for Israel. And their specific demands are that their respective colleges divest their college funds from companies that support Israel militarily or Israeli-owned companies, among other things. Now, this has set up a battle with the campus presidents and police. Democrat and Republican lawmakers are calling for the police to enter onto the campuses, which are private property, to disperse, arrest, and shut down the protests. But as I said, this is the latest installment in a long story. We covered this at the beginning of the war on October 7th. This is the latest iteration. At the beginning of the conflict, they targeted and sectioned out a handful of university presidents on the East Coast. It was University of Pennsylvania, Columbia University, and Harvard University.
Listen, I wonder if the president of Columbia hadn't been called in front of Congress to testify to answer for all the anti-Semitism on campus, I don't even think these protests would be happening. I mean, could this entirely be an unforced, like, Zionist conservative error where they just had to do this spectacle of like an anti-Semitism hearing in Congress again? And if they had just left Columbia alone, where Columbia had already banned the Students for Justice in Palestine group anyway, they had already banned the Jewish Voices for Peace group anyway, and they still called her to testify. And if they just hadn't done that, these protests might not be as bad as they are right now. They might not even be happening at all.
That Jewish Zionist donors said we're not doing enough to combat anti-Semitism or pro-Palestine sentiment on their campuses. As a result, 2 out of those 3 university presidents have been fired. They were dragged before a congressional hearing and interrogated. Donors threatened to pull their funds from the university. There was a mainstream media campaign smearing them as anti-Semites. And ultimately, the pressure was too much. And at Harvard and at UPenn, they were thrown out. That was the first part. And as we talked about on the show, that obviously raises serious questions about sovereignty. What is the role of universities, and specifically elite universities? Well, the role of elite universities or Ivy League universities, their job is to churn out the American elite. Many people don't think about it in these terms, but schools like Columbia, Harvard, Yale, they're churning out thousands of graduates every year. It's in the thousands, not millions. And their graduate schools, it's even smaller still. How many graduates are in an average graduating class at Harvard Law School or Yale Law School? It's very small. And it's from that pool of hundreds or thousands per year that they then go on into the State Department, or they go on into the Supreme Court, or become federal judges, or become CEOs or senior vice presidents of Fortune 500 companies, or they work at the banks. And it goes on and on like this. So the Ivy League universities, which not only control the graduating class, which becomes the elite, they also control the research. All the intellectual output of the country comes from a series of elite Ivy League or research universities, which is controlled by and overseen by the universities. And that research and that intellectual output is what forms the basis of the laws, of opinion, of techniques, of culture and art in the country. And if the presidents and the boards, which control these institutions, which have so much power, can be decapitated and replaced by Jewish Zionist money, then what does that tell us about how the country works? If the president of Harvard, who presides over one of the most prestigious and important institutions in the country, can be fired after several months because Bill Ackman and a number of other Zionist Jews have been trashing her in the media.
By the way, remember when they swore to us that conservatives were winning if they just got Claudine Gay fired for plagiarism charges at Harvard? And I said, if you get Claudine Gay fired at Harvard, like, nothing's really going to change. I guess you got a head on your wall, but like, nothing's really going to change. And everyone's like, no, 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 this means we're winning. We're winning. Conservatives are winning. The president of Harvard got fired, even though she still retains her $900,000 a year faculty job and is actually even closer to students at Harvard now than she was before. I was assured that that meant conservatives were winning and that none of this protest stuff would be happening anymore because conservatives were winning.
What does that tell us about Harvard? What does that tell us about Harvard Business School and Harvard Law School and the firms or other sectors of elite society that scout talent from Harvard Business or Harvard Law School or Harvard University?
Yeah.
And the same goes for UPenn,
Pinky swear,
Columbia,
trust
or
me,
Yale,
bro.
or all the schools that weren't targeted by the Zionists. It tells us how much influence they have over our society. But that was chapter one. The big story now is that there are massive protests occurring at Columbia University, New York University, and Yale. And those protests have now spread to a number of other campuses across the country. And this is the latest from the New York Times. It says, quote, "A wave of pro-Palestinian protests spread and intensified on Wednesday as students gathered on campuses across the country, in some cases facing off with police in a widening showdown over campus speech and the war in Gaza. University administrators from Texas to California moved to clear protesters and prevent encampments from taking hold on their own campuses, as they have at Columbia University, deploying police in tense confrontations that have already led to dozens of arrests. At the same time, new protests continued erupting in places like Pittsburgh and San Antonio. Students expressed solidarity with their fellow students at Columbia and with a pro-Palestinian movement that appeared to be galvanized by the pushback on other campuses and the looming end of the academic year. Protesters on several campuses said their demands included divestment by the universities from companies connected to the Israeli military, disclosure of those and other investments, and a recognition of the continuing right to protest without punishment. The demonstration spread overseas as well, with students on campuses in Cairo, Paris, and Sydney, Australia, gathering to voice support for Palestinians in opposition to the war. As new protests were emerging, the Speaker of the House, Representative Mike Johnson, Republican, visited the Columbia campus in New York, where university officials were seeking to negotiate with protest leaders to end the encampment of around 80 tents still pitched on a central campus lawn. Mr. Johnson said the school's president should resign if she could not immediately get the situation under control, calling her an inept leader.
By the way, that's like the dumbest piece of advice that has been given yet. If the Columbia University president resigns, the students win. Because if the Columbia University president resigns, there's going to be a massive internal power struggle at Columbia. And P.S., most of the people who work at Columbia support the students. Like, they're on their side. And so you want to take like I mean, she may not be an ideal president right now. I'm not going to say she's the best president ever. I'm not going to say she shouldn't resign at some point, but like right now, if you took her out of that role, it would just create infighting and struggle within the entire executive team at the university, and it would just make things worse. And then the students would get even more brazen because the university would all be infighting with each other. It would be really bad. So of course, I would love to see her resign because I want this to. Listen, man, I'm going to be able to cover this protest stuff for months. This is like seeing the socialist revolution before our very eyes. I'm not saying I'm opposed to chaos necessarily. I'm in New Hampshire. It's not going to impact me. But that's exactly what's going to happen if she ends up resigning.
Who had failed to guarantee the safety of Jewish students. Now, here's another aspect of this, which few people are talking about. So these protests have spread across the country. They're pro-Palestine. They want the universities to divest from Israel. They seem to only be getting larger and more widespread and bigger on their respective campuses. And in every state, the campus presidents are trying to get the police involved to arrest the protesters or forcibly disperse them. An aspect of it that people are not talking about is that orders are coming directly from the state of Israel. This is from antiwar.com.
Really?
It says Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu
the
on Wednesday called for a crackdown on Americans protesting against Israel's slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza. He said, quote, what's happening in America's college campus.
Okay, like, listen, you might not agree with the protesters, and that's fine, but it's pretty gross that we just spent years listening to conservatives complain about how their speech on college campuses is censored. There were entire campaigns to raise money to fight the censorship of conservative ideas on college campuses. And then the leftist students actually do something about their ideas because unlike conservatives never protest. They never do anything but whine and complain on Twitter. Leftists actually go and do something when they have strong opinions. They take over the goddamn university. They basically cause massive amounts of chaos. They get massive media attention for their ideas. But conservatives don't like their ideas, and so now conservatives want to censor their ideas because the leftists are saying words that conservatives don't like. So just like a year ago, they were complaining about censoring conservative ideas on campus. Now they want to censor leftist ideas on campus, and it's effing gross. And the fact that Greg Abbott was like celebrating and basically high-fiving himself about calling out like the riot police on those students at UT Austin because those students were saying words that Greg Abbott didn't like. Don't ever tell me that these weak-ass conservatives are the defender of individual liberties. Don't ever tell me that they're going to defend my ability to speak my mind. In fact, they've made it quite clear to me that they don't want me talking about this. No one will support Nick getting back on Twitter. There's no reason that Nick Fuentes is banned on Twitter right now. If Elon Musk actually cared about free speech, he would absolutely reinstate Nick Fuentes' account today and let him say whatever the F he wants. If for no other reason, then Twitter is a lot more entertaining when Nick is on Twitter than when Nick is not on Twitter. So it's like a win-win for everyone. Elon would make money off of it. Nick could make money off of it. The rest of us would be entertained. He would prove his commitment to free speech. Why are they so afraid of a 25-year-old having a Twitter account?
Campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. At some American universities, police have arrested and dispersed protesters, but Netanyahu said that more should be done. He said, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done. The Israeli opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid also called for a crackdown on the protests. He wrote on Twitter, quote, what's happening on American college campuses is unforgivable It is anti-Semitism.
Unforgivable
It
for
is
people to have
support for
opinions they don't
terrorism.
like.
It is support for Hamas, which
Jesus
murders gay
Christ.
people and oppresses women. The administration cannot stand by. It has to intervene. Okay? So this is America, actually. We have a First Amendment. We have freedom to
Indeed.
speak. We have freedom to assemble. We have freedom of the press. But in America, if you go to a university where people are supposed to debate and discuss ideas, where we're able to be freely intellectual and have freedom of conscience, at these universities, when students say that they don't support Israel, and by the way, peacefully, nobody's being killed, nobody's being hurt, there's no violence. When students go to a leading university and protest Israel, the American government says that's where the First Amendment ends. And now they want to get the police involved. And by the way, these are the most liberal universities in America, with extremely liberal faculty and extremely liberal
Leftist,
administrators.
not liberal,
They
leftist.
stood by and did nothing when there were actually violent protests 4 years ago during BLM. When there were student and other protesters vandalizing and committing arson and intimidating, nobody was calling for an end to the protests.
Yeah, Bill Ackman was funding all this stuff in 2020. Bill Ackman was putting tens of millions of dollars into funding the programs that created the goddamn problem in the first place. And now he wants to act like he's everyone's savior.
From the left, nobody was calling an end to the protests in the universities. That was considered to be an expression of rage, justifiable by the Black community.
Well, no, it's
now
all connected
that when
to this.
people are protesting against Israel, even the most liberal university administrators want to now bring in the police and crack the whip and shut it down. Why? Because Israel told them to. Because Israel told them to. Because Bibi Netanyahu said that you need to send in the cops. And so did Mike Johnson.
And
so
by
did
the way,
Chuck Schumer. And so did...
By the way, I don't know how many people know this, but Israel trains the NYPD. Israel actually sends teams of people over here. They train the NYPD. They train the cops in Atlanta. They train the cops in Chicago, in probably several other major cities as well. There's a training center out of Georgia that does this. We learned about this from the Stop Cop City far leftist encampment that has their little thing going on in Georgia, where they were explaining how Israel is responsible for training the cops. I don't understand why that's happening. I don't understand how that decision came down. But someone should really look into that, because this is not even the first time I've heard about this. I heard about Israel training the cops in Chicago months ago, and I just didn't understand it, so I kind of just put it in the back of my head and was like, that's funny. So if anyone knows more about that, I would be very interested.
Republican and Democrat legislators and politicians, including the Democrat mayor of New York City, they have all said the cops have to be sent in. Greg Abbott stopped short of basically saying anti-Semitism is illegal.
Can someone tell Nick, can one of the Groypers tell Nick that Israel literally trains the cops in like many major American cities? And could he comment on that and talk about that? Because I have no idea why that's happening, but he actually might know that. So I would be very... Can someone super chat Nick and ask him to talk about it or something?
That to say or to be anti-Semitic or to say something anti-Semitic is illegal and you should be arrested for it. But this is America. I thought we had a First Amendment. You may not like anti-Semitism. You may not agree with it. We don't even know what anti-Semitism is. According to leading Jews, rabbis, and Holocaust museums, they say it's the hate that mutates, which means that it's always changing, which means that it can be whatever they need it to be on any given day and to fit the circumstance, to fit their need. So I would argue that what's happening doesn't even conform to most people's conception of anti-Semitism. Protesting a war by a foreign country is not a hate of a race, which
Alex Jones has talked about the Police
bigotry or
thing?
racism or anti-Semitism might mean. But regardless of the definition, whether it meets it or not, we still have a First Amendment that protects it and protects people's right to say things or demonstrate in public and assemble in support of things that may be considered anti-Semitic or not. But liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans have both agreed that there is one category that is not protected by the Constitution, and that is anybody that criticizes Israel. That is any effective, any meaningful critique of Israel that could leverage the government or leverage society to change course. Anything that would actually have impact is now no longer protected by the First Amendment. And you know, there's something interesting about that, which is that seems to always be the exception, doesn't it? Earlier this year on Twitter, Elon Musk and Linda Yaccarino announced that there was going to be a new community guidelines. After Elon Musk visited the Auschwitz Memorial Museum with Ben Shapiro and the president of Israel, Twitter, which he owns,
Nick, you're supposed to be
announced that their
talking about
new
the
community
protests.
guidelines would protect freedom of discussion on politics, but would now prohibit hate speech and in particular anti-Semitism. And that was considered the long-fought triumph of Jonathan Greenblatt and the ADL. You may remember that when Elon Musk initially acquired Twitter in November 2022, Jonathan Greenblatt and the ADL, a Jewish group, led a boycott at Twitter because they said that Twitter would become home to anti-Semitism and would incubate hatred against Jews if it were allowed to have total free speech. You may recall that just yesterday, TikTok was banned by new legislation that just passed in the Senate and was today signed by President Joe Biden. Why? Because of advocacy by the North American Jewish Federation of Jewish organizations. They said that TikTok causes people to be anti-Semitic, so we can't have it in America. The same was also true of Ron.
So it wasn't banned because it's Chinese software and they were spying on American people. We're just going to overlook that. It was banned because TikToks kept going viral that were pro-Palestinian and people were starting to support Palestine, and so they had to ban it.
DeSantis anti-tech censorship bill in May 2021. After Donald Trump was banned on every social media, Republican states like Florida and Texas took up legislation that would protect conservative consumers from being banned on big tech platforms. But some of them didn't go all the way. In particular, the free speech bill, anti-tech censorship bill in Florida, would not go all the way because, according to inside sources, to fully protect free speech would allow people to deny the Holocaust or say things that are anti-Semitic. And finally, we recall that this year, there have been dozens of additional states that have codified particular definitions of anti-Semitism into the law so that anyone who commits a crime while criticizing Israel can be charged with a hate crime. And the charges can escalate and include more harsh sentences. This is our country. This is America. First Amendment, Constitution, but not when it comes to criticizing Israel, not in Florida, not on TikTok, not on Twitter, not on university campuses, not in the state of South Dakota or 35 other states. And by the way, even Republicans won't protect that free speech. You know, Republicans that always say that it's about free speech and they're against censorship and this is a country that's built on freedom and we don't guarantee your safety, but we guarantee your right to the ride of your lifetime. But not when it includes denying the Holocaust or anti-Semitism or even
I
just
don't
plain
deny the
criticizing
Holocaust for the
Israel or
record.
the
I'm sure it
actions
was
of the
exactly
Israeli
6
government.
million who died. Exactly. No
Where
less.
are they now? Where are all the conservatives criticizing this? I think I counted Matt Walsh say something about that, and I think that's the end of the list from mainstream conservatives. In fact, they support it. They're against tech censorship unless it's censoring anti-Semitism. They're against the government cracking down on protesters unless the protesters are anti-Semitic. They're against banning speech at the level of government unless it's banning anti-Semitic speech. Why? Why is it that way? Everybody knows why. It's obvious. It's glaringly obvious. Because the country is controlled by Jews and Israel. And specifically, the Republican Party is completely captured by the Israel lobby. Netanyahu tells them to ban anti-Semitism. The Republican governors do it. Netanyahu tells them to divest from Ben & Jerry's because Ben & Jerry's is anti-Semitic. They do it. Netanyahu tells them crack down on the protesters. Police is not enough. They do it. Who's the president of the United States? Is it Joe Biden or Bibi Netanyahu? Joe Biden, the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, the leader of the free world, he begs and pleads in private on phone calls with the head of state of a foreign country that we're giving billions of dollars to. Please don't invade Rafah. Please don't antagonize Iran. Please don't bomb Hezbollah in Lebanon. They do it anyway. The most powerful man in the world has to resort to leaking phone conversations to the New York Times or the Washington Post to express to his own people his displeasure with a foreign head of state, which should be our client. And the Washington Post will publish a headline, according to anonymous sources, Joe Biden says Netanyahu's an asshole. Because the leader of the free world would never dare to say it in public himself. Who's in control here?
Good point.
They say that Israel is our ally. It's not an equal relationship, clearly. They say Israel is a client state of America. They're our aircraft carrier. They're our base of operations. They're the front line in a common battle. Clearly
Is
not.
he going to talk about the
Republicans
protests?
say they're for freedom.
Or,
they're
like,
patriots.
come on.
Clearly not.
I
They
feel
say
like
they
I
want to
was
secure
bait
the
and
border.
switched.
They're America first. Obviously not.
Not that I'm like,
All these
not that this is bad, but like I
would
wanted to hear
not
about the
exist
protests.
Otherwise, don't you understand that? These are things that don't make sense. They would be considered irrational hypocrisies, but seen another way, you realize that Republicans
Nick
just
goes on
lie.
tangents.
They're fronting. It's a front.
I understand, but it's annoying. But I do it too.
You realize that to make it seem completely consistent, you would have to believe that Israel controls us and not the other way around. These contradictions wouldn't exist otherwise. And that's why we need a completely parallel, independent movement that's supported by American patriots.
I'm distracted by the
people
stash.
that live and die for America, that take America as seriously as the Jews take Israel, that take Jesus as seriously as Jews take themselves. That's the kind of movement we need. Not people, because I feel like a lot of people fundamentally don't even understand. They look at guys like Dave Rubin and say, yeah, he's just confused about Israel. They're not confused. Dave Rubin and Shapiro and Netanyahu.
Oh, they're not
and all of
confused
them,
at all.
They know exactly what they're about. And they will tell you, and they do. And it's all there in public. If you just listen. They only care about Israel.
Mm-hmm.
They only care about their own people. And therefore, they can never be our allies because they are not with us. We're not them. They don't consider us part of their thing. They are a tribe. We're not in it. And so they will always be they. They will always be the Jews. And we will always be the Gentiles. And to think that we could stand shoulder to shoulder with them because they express.
Andy No is writing that the student riots don't have outside agitators. Well, it depends on what you mean by outside agitators. If Andy No is saying that Antifa is not involved, that's kind of correct. But if Andy No is saying there are no outside groups involved, that is not correct. But if he's like making a specific reference to like kind of like the Antifa type people, then he's right about that.
Liberal sentiment or a conservative sentiment. And that means that we have a common cause is to fundamentally misunderstand what they're really about. The moment that Israel's attacked, they're all on the same page and they're all working together. And they'll do whatever they can. They will lie, cheat, and steal. And they act like they care. They're fanatical about their support for Israel. They will do whatever it takes to get Israel what it needs and to ensure their survival. But we don't see it like that. And they will use people, incidentally, to that end.
Yes, they will.
So this doesn't stop until people wake up and realize that this is the biggest threat that we face by far. So I absolutely support these protesters at Columbia and in Texas and at Berkeley. I know they're left-wing. I know many of them are non-white. I know many of them hate me. But I support them because maybe this is the beginning of people realizing that Israel controls this country. And maybe if people see cops kill or shoot or arrest, some kind of flashpoint, maybe if people see that, people will start to wake up and realize what needs to happen in this country for us to set things straight, which is for us to have real American leadership again. So these protests should continue. You should go to them if you can. Don't go there as a Trump supporter. Go in there and blend in. You need to go to these protests at Columbia or wherever, and don't make it obvious that you're right-wing. Don't make it obvious that you're a Trump supporter. Try to blend in. But we need to support this. This is a huge, massive movement.
That's actually really good advice. And I'll tell you this. So if anyone's actually thinking about doing this, I've gone undercover at socialist events before. And so I kind of know how to do it. And here's the advice I'm going to give you. You might be nervous about doing something like this because you think that they're going to hate you because you're a conservative or a groiper or like right wing or like whatever. But like Nick is right. You don't need to talk about disagreements right now. You can talk about things that you agree upon. And I promise you, they're going to be really nice to you. People at left-wing events are actually really nice to people that they perceive to be kind of like on their team or potentially on their team. Like they're not going to, like, as long as you don't start shit, as long as you don't do anything, you'll be fine. So I think that's actually really good advice. And it could be an interesting experiment for many of you to actually go, if you've never actually talked to a socialist, like in real life, or talked to a leftist, just on based on things you agree with, not on the crazy stuff that you disagree on, it might actually be an interesting experiment just to see how people perceive it. But just don't start shit. Don't start shit, won't be no shit.
It's visible, it's unignorable, it's young people, it's organic, it's international. And this is something where we're really forcing them into a bind. These university presidents, they have liberal faculty that won't support it. There's enough resistance inside the universities that it's not cut and dry where they can just have it shut down. And these people aren't going to go away. The cops are going to have to go in there, and it's going to be a major confrontation. And at one of these universities, it may get ugly.
Yep.
And this could be the beginning of a movement. You see that the tide has totally turned. The temperature has changed. There's something in the air right now. This is the opportunity for something to happen that will finally destroy the mandate for America to support Israel and break this trance, stop this psychological control over our country, that these people are our closest allies, that we're a Judeo-Christian society and that Israel's the closest ally. Maybe some right-wing people can finally wake up if they see that, if they see their own liberal kids getting blown to smithereens by cops because Netanyahu told them to. So I love to see it. This is truly a world historical moment, and it's an historic moment for our country and its relationship to Israel. And we have to do everything that we can to exploit this conflict right now on both sides, on the right and on the left. Exploit the contradictions on the right by talking about the free speech hypocrisies, exploit the contradictions on the right by talking about America First foreign policy, or about how these Jews aren't Christian, that sort of thing, and exploit it on the left by showing that this is a liberal administration, and yet they're supporting the aggressor. They're supporting the so-called settler colonialist aggressor. They're shutting down protests, shutting down free speech against these Muslims.
Is Nick watching my content?
We have to exploit it on both sides to galvanize people behind a common pro-American sentiment.
Nick is saying things that, excuse me, Nick is saying things that sound an awful lot like things that I've been saying, like in the using the exact same link. I'm just saying it's okay if Nick's watching my content. That's all right.
And I think you're seeing it on both sides. You're seeing it with the Groypers, you're seeing it with Candace Owens, and of course you are seeing it on the left with what's happening at the university and even inside the Biden administration and with these non-committed voters in the Democrat primary. We have to push because now is the time. This is when everyone's talking about it. This is where the momentum is. And if you've been obstinately silent so far, stop. Now is the time.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to
Hi, Nick.
commentators.
We
Now is the
appreciate
time
you.
to take a risk and push the envelope and to start to talk about this stuff. I don't know what people need to see happen, but this is it. Instead, right now, some people are choosing to double down and say, well, what about Jews like Stephen Miller? I don't see Stephen Miller talking too much about this, actually. What about Jews like Paul Gottfried? Paul Gottfried is talking about his ancestors that went up the chimneys at Auschwitz. I don't give a shit about Gottfried and Stephen Miller. This is about America and Israel. This is about Christians and Jews. This is about patriotism. This is about, are we going to take back our country and put America first? Not are we going to work with these people and give them another chance, another generation of neocons, another generation of Israel first and America second, another generation of smug, smarmy, degenerate, atheist Jews at their Shabbat dinners, smugly and snidely using us as their efficient tool to secure more support for Israel while giving us some sort of paltry concession. I don't think so. So I'll tell you one thing. I am not going to see J.D. Vance and American Moment and Yoram Hazony and Koshnal Amaru and Curtis Yarvin, the degenerate Satanist Jew, steal the initiative from America First that was born from Trumpism. And people need to be radically aware of this. I am so sick and tired of stupid, naive, young white men that don't really get it. These Jews hate us. They hate our God. They're degenerate. They are liberal. They don't give a shit about America.
I don't agree with that.
Or anything.
I'm not a Christian.
And so many young white people, they don't.
But Nick's allowed to have his opinion. I just don't agree with him on that.
Well, but we gotta be practical. But I gotta get a job. You know. Well, so Raheem Kassam is gonna publish my articles. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm sorry.
I like that you did. Hang on.
Okay, you were
hang
cooking,
on.
Now
hang on. Nick had that was a beautiful amount of righteous indignation. That was Nick. Listen, man. When Nick eventually does have sex, which is obviously not going to be until after he's married to a very hot, very submissive Italian Catholic virgin. But when Nick eventually does decide to have sex, I think Nick's going to be good in bed. I really do. It's just like, it's like that fucking swagger, that attitude. He's going to make some very hot, submissive Italian Catholic virgin very happy someday. Can we see that again?
And people need to be radically aware of this. I am so sick and tired of stupid, naive, young white men that don't really get it. These Jews hate us. They hate our God. They're degenerate. They are liberal. They don't give a shit about America or who we are or anything. And so many young white people, they don't take the threat seriously enough. They think it's a joke. Well, but we got to be practical, but I got to get a job. You know, well, so Raheem Kassam is going to publish my articles. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm sorry. We're at the point of the show now where it's like, okay, you were cooking, now you're just seething.
Oh my God.
The cooking to seething barrier threshold has been passed. But it's true. But I am absolutely serious about this. It's time for people to wake up. Don't give me that. Well, you know, I said this on Telegram right before I went live. Monologue over. We're about to get into super chats. A couple weeks ago, Patrick Casey said, oh, these guys are allying with Muslims to criticize Israel. Muslims aren't allies of the West. What about Stephen Miller and Paul Gottfried? They defend us. And it's like, I mean, this guy's probably a Fed, but let's say he's not. You had these young white guys that went from, oh, Israel's our closest ally? Huh, yeah, right. Years later, no, guys, base Jews are our closest allies. Jews like Paul Gottfried and Stephen Miller are our closest allies. If you don't want to ally with these Jews, well, you're just not being pragmatic. I don't really believe in that sort of thing anymore.
Yeah, Nick's right.
Like, that's some serious Benedict Arnold. That is some serious
It's just
Judas
code for being a feckless
shit. And
pussy.
I have more contempt for white people that go against than for the adversary. Because if you are a young white man, your future is being totally destroyed.
I don't
Your
agree with that,
future is
but
being
whatever.
mortgaged. It's over for you.
I think that's
Your
a really
race,
shitty thing to
your
say to people, honestly.
civilization, your ancestors, all of it. Your
The reason I say, like, I don't agree with that is, listen, guys, I understand why Nick is making this argument. I don't agree with this argument, but no one should tell anyone else that they have no future. No one should tell anyone else that they can't accomplish exactly what they want to, because if you don't believe that you can accomplish what you want to, you never will. So no matter how bleak things look in the world, you still have a lot of power. You have agency. You have resilience. You can do whatever you want to in the world. People can still be successful doing whatever they want to do. There are millions and millions of people who have no idea that any of this stuff is going on, that are perfectly successful every day. There are millions of white men that are still successful every single day, probably because they don't pay attention to politics and they don't have Twitter accounts, which is bound to keep you far more sane. But don't believe for 1 second that you have no future and there's no reason to even try, because you will never be able to accomplish anything with that mindset. And it's a really shitty thing for Nick to say. And like, I understand why he's saying it, but like, Nick has a young, impressionable audience. And if you even just look at Nick himself, Nick's whole thing is improbable at best. Nick has very literally been able to build a grassroots army of dedicated incels against all odds. So Nick is the very last person in the world who should be telling people what is and is not possible. I know he didn't mean it like this. I feel like I haven't given him any criticism in this reaction, so I have to give him a little bit just so people don't think I'm like simping for him or something. But you should never tell people what they are and are not capable of, okay?
Prosperity, your inheritance for your children, it is all going down the tubes. Not for them, not in Israel, not in South Florida, not in LA, not in Brooklyn, but for you, it's over. But they don't get it. They think they're clever. You're not clever. They're clever. You're not clever. You're another dumb goy. They are clever. They work with the devil. You are their instrument. You are their tool. There's one thing. We have one ally, and it's not Stephen Miller. It's God. Stephen Miller is not our friend. Believe me. Stephen Miller is not our friend. Paul Gottfried is not our friend. We have one ally, and that's God. That's it. Forget about the rest of that stuff. You know, American Conservative and Chronicle and Pedro Gonzalez and Yoram Hazony, and Zamor, they are not our allies. Believe me. Your ally is God and people that believe in God. And God has a name. It's Jesus Christ. Never forget that. And if they can't say that, they're not your friend. Italians understand that. We understand it's about blood. Other people don't understand. That's, maybe that's a little ethnic chauvinism, but that's just true. Okay. I think Italians uniquely understand this. These other people are a little more naive. So we need young white men that are deadly serious about this and totally understand it to infiltrate. Not these people that are going to go and 5 years down the line say, hey, Stephen Miller isn't actually that bad. How stupid can you be? How stupid and foolish and naive can you possibly be? Shame on you. Anyway.
Listen. Nick someday will have the revelation that Christianity is a Jewish psyop. We'll get like he won't ever admit it, but it's someday it's going to dawn on him that Christianity is a Jewish psyop. But you know what? He's 25. He's got a long way to go. Just people have to come around to things in their own time.
But that's a little more particular. You know, when you talk about America, I think everyone can get behind that. When you talk about like Patrick Casey and Stephen Miller, you kind of, that's like for a very specific audience of people that are infiltrating the system. So anyway, but that's that. I want to move on. We're going to get into our super chats. And see-
I really wish he had done more actual commentary about the goddamn protests instead of just saying the same old things about, not that I wasn't entertained by it, but I actually did want to hear Nick's opinion on the protests. So maybe in future episodes, as this continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger, maybe Nick could actually talk about the protests. That would be really great. But that's all I have for tonight, guys. Thank you for allowing me a point of personal privilege to just have some more relaxing content, because I have been spy streaming the past couple of days. Again, in case you missed it and you want to catch up, we were actually infiltrating the California Community College's LGBTQ+ Summit, all about queer liberation within the California Community College system. We've been doing that the last 2 days. We basically recorded a bunch of their stuff, and now I'm going to go make some clips of it and put it on the internet. You're going to be able to find all that content here, not there, on my Substack, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can access each full live stream. They're all available on demand. So if you missed anything, you can go back and watch it. Don't worry, I'm going to get to poll results. Relax. So you can find that there. If you want to support the work I'm doing, you can sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. That helps keep me in business. Just like Nick, I am completely grassroots funded. I don't have any big time political donors, so I don't have to adhere to any political narrative. My only job is to tell you guys the truth, to show you the primary source evidence. I've got a lot of stuff that's going to be going up on the Substack, a lot of clips from the last couple days, and I will be continuing with heavy protest coverage as long as this is going on, because this is like watching the socialist revolution right in front of us. So I will be breaking it down, explaining. Just like yesterday, I posted this piece about how I think Columbia University protesters are trying to recreate the Kent State massacre. Last night on the channel, we actually watched a full documentary about Kent State. So if you want to learn more about that and kind of brush up on your history, there are some shocking parallels. It was actually really creepy. History is rewriting itself. And so if you want to follow that type of content, head over to my Substack. Again, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can sign up for free email updates or support the work I'm doing. And to get to the poll results, it looks like 87% of you think I should go to Afpac. 13% of you say no. I do need to think about it a little bit more, because like I said earlier, there is actually a scheduling conflict between, like, I already had something on my calendar and I would just have to rethink some things. So I have plenty of time to decide. I don't have to let them know for like another month or so. And but like Afpac is definitely in the running. I just have to think about it. And if I end up going to Afpac, it will be because I had to move my schedule around and sacrifice something to do it. So I want credit for that. All right. So we'll see. I'm not promising anything, but I'm kind of leaning towards yes, just because it feels like the moment, you know? And I definitely don't agree with everything that Nick says. I absolutely do not agree with everything the Groypers say and do. I quite frankly strongly dislike a lot of the Groypers. I strongly dislike a lot of the people that Nick surrounds himself with. But I like Nick, and I would like to be there for whatever thing Nick is planning, just to see it for myself so I don't have to trust someone else's coverage on it. So we'll see. We'll see. Guys, I will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow for happy hour, and we'll figure out what we're doing then. Please mount the like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. And have a good night, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye. Wait. What? What? Wait. No one go anywhere. What? But I thought James wasn't thinking about me. James swore up and down that he was never thinking about me. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Stand by. James apparently has figured out that I do indeed have a sock account, and it doesn't actually matter if you block me. I'm still going to see everything you're doing anyway. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. 5 minutes. Oh my God. Oh my God. James again. Because I have been, wow. So now James Lindsay's followers have made a Twitter account that says, why is Karlin Borisenko, with like no followers. And apparently they've created a propaganda video about me that claims I'm obsessed with James. And James, because remember guys, remember, James Lindsay doesn't think about me at all. James Lindsay tweeted just the other day that he never thinks about me. And yet, in the past week and a half, James Lindsay accused me of having borderline personality disorder because John Morgan, who's a member of my community, wrote a fan fiction that was about me. James was like a minor part in the fan fiction, and I hadn't even read it yet by the time James was already complaining about it. So James said that I have borderline personality disorder because someone else wrote a fan fiction in which he had an unflattering role that he did not like. And so that was the first thing. And then I made a video about how James accused me of having a personality disorder. And then what did he do next? Oh, then James and his audience said that I'm a member of the secret Gnostic sex cult because I know about the law of attraction and A Course in Miracles. And so that means I'm a queer Gnostic sex cultist, which I'm not a Gnostic, so I don't know where he got that. So then I made a video about that. And then James started cavorting with trolls and just like the most toxic people of the internet to smear me even further. This is the second time that James has posted a smear video from this account, from the people running this account in order to smear me. And again, claiming that I have a personality disorder because I've been making videos quite literally showing you James Lindsay's tweets. This is my crime. This is why I have a personality disorder, is I retweeted a fan fiction that I didn't write. And then I do videos literally just showing you James Lindsay's tweets about me. Oh, right. Oh, this is the other thing he did. This is the other thing. After I did the Gnostic sex cult stream, James Lindsay posted a Photoshop screenshot to make it look like my stream only had 1 view when it had over 1,000. So James is like quite literally manufacturing evidence, or people are manufacturing evidence on James's behalf and like DMing it to him. And he's just posting it to smear me with like reckless disregard for the truth at all. James, listen, bro. I'm not going to watch this video from this troll account because I've had a really long day. Unlike James Lindsay, I've been actually going under, well, it isn't really undercover, but I did sign up under a fake name. I did get inside a queer liberation conference and have been streaming it for like 4 hours a day the last couple days. I also did a late night stream last night. I've done 5 p.m. streams. I have been streaming a lot. I'm tired. I have a lot of clips to make. James Lindsay is like, obviously I am living rent free in James's head, but unlike James, I have other things to do with my life. And I don't have memes to make because I'm not the maker of the memes that James Lindsay hates so much. Other people are the makers of the memes. But I do have clips to make, and I do have other stuff to do. Rottweiler says, prepare the orbital meme cannons. So what people might not know is, if James wants to keep escalating, my community are way better trolls than James's community. In fact, my community, the internet meltdown that we're actually seeing from James now is the result of like months of effort from my community to just like harangue his ass and be on his ass. Basically what's happening is we are taking and adapting the tactics of the groypers in terms of like haranguing Turning Point and haranguing conservative influencers. And we're targeting James Lindsay because James Lindsay is lying to his audience about what's going on in order to shill for the conservative narrative. And I feel like it's important to point out that James Lindsay is lying because he's misleading millions of people regarding what is actually going on in the world. But my point is this, my community are way better trolls. We have basically a meme factory. Yeah, human centipede. James is posting about me again. James just posted another video from another troll account about me. I was like about ready to end the stream, and then Bill came in the chat and he was like, James is posting about you again. Well, yeah, I mean, I asked John Morgan to write another fan fiction, but you know what? Listen, John Morgan is an artist. He's a writer. He writes very nice. He writes good fiction. And we're going to wait for John Morgan to be inspired to write another fan fiction, because that last fan fiction that John Morgan wrote that really was only meant for my community, and the only reason more people in the world saw the fan fiction was because James complained about the fan fiction. And in the fan fiction, James might have been whipped by me until he admitted whiteness means capitalism, and he may have been offered up as a ritual sacrifice to the Gnostic sex cult in which he released the revelation onto the world that whiteness means capitalism. I mean, it wasn't the most flattering role, but I'm just saying it was a work of brilliance, and I feel like John Morgan was inspired when he wrote that fan fiction. So you can't rush these things. Let John Morgan cook. Another one's going to come. We know that. Anyway, what people might not know is that my community is already coordinating our next attack on James, and we've registered GnosticSexCult.com, and we already own BetterDiscourses.com, and we're cranking up meme production. We're getting a little bit more strategic in our attacks. If James thinks that he can just like, if James thinks he can outdo us by retweeting a troll account with 7 followers, bro, who do you think you're dealing with? I literally wrote the book about fighting back against the woke left. If James had bothered to read my book, he would have found that there was an entire chapter dedicated to annoying the left. One of the rules I have for fighting back against the woke left is to mock them relentlessly. If James Lindsay wants to act like a woke little bitch, if James Lindsay wants to abandon all semblance of intellectual integrity, then I have no problem taking the rules in the book that I literally wrote and applying them directly to him. James Lindsay is not a special and unique snowflake. He is worthy of criticism, just like everyone else, and he's lying to his audience about what's going on. Never, ever forget that queer theory is not a Gnostic sex cult. Queer theory is an attack on the gender binary to abolish it because they believe capitalism created the gender binary. It's also an attack on the nuclear family to abolish that because they believe the nuclear family upholds capitalism. Every single time James Lindsay says that queer theory is a Gnostic sex cult, he is lying to his audience overtly, and that's based on watching thousands of hours of far-left socialist training. We know what the queer Marxists are saying. We know what they're doing. James refuses to look at this and instead says Gnostic sex cult, Gnostic sex cult, Gnostic sex cult, Oprah, United Nations, law of attraction, Gnostic sex cult, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. He is misleading millions of people who are going to have their children impacted because they don't understand what's going on because James refuses to tell them. And if I need to go to war with James Lindsay to harangue his ass until he either does the right thing or shuts up and gets out of the way to let other people do it, I will do it. And my community is far better. We are far more creative. James Lindsay's community is basically a bunch of like conservative Christian old lady milfs that are trying to get James to lick their pussy. That's all it is. You think my community, who aren't even mostly conservative, are going to be outworked by a bunch of old lady conservative Christians? Not that there's anything wrong with being an old lady conservative Christian. I have old lady conservative Christians in my audience too. But my audience is way more creative. They're not bitter about how their life turned out. And we're cranking up meme production, James, and you can eat a dick. You're just going to have to deal with it until you start being responsible. But keep dreaming about me, James. Keep dreaming about me. It's all right, bro. It's all right. You're not the first. You won't be the last. It's okay. I have lived in many people's heads rent-free for years at a time. And while James is complaining about me, I will be doing the best protest coverage that you're finding on the internet. I will be breaking everything down bit by bit. I will be explaining how it all goes together. The very best place to follow me if you want up to the minute protest coverage is going to be my Twitter account, which is Dr. Carlin B. And coincidentally, before we go, here is a testimonial that someone left on my video where I was explaining how James Lindsay literally photoshopped evidence to try to discredit me to prevent people from watching my content. And she said, I watched James a long, long time ago, but what he was teaching didn't make any sense with what we were actually seeing inside schools. Your work has always been clear and with direct connections to the actual people who are influential in the socialist march forward. James is leading people down a hellhole of lies, and he is going to defend it to the detriment of all the families and children who depend on knowing the truth. Thank you, Carlin. Hopefully more people will start to see the truth you are shining a bright light on. James, if you think that some video from some troll account posted by people who have literally been harassing me for the last 4 years is going to stop me from doing what I want to do and saying what I want to say and telling the truth about what's going on and calling you on your bullshit, you are insane, bro. The irony is that being harassed for 4 years by the people that now James is now working with and colluding with did more for my resiliency than anything else in the world. There is nothing you can say about me. There is nothing you can do to me that hasn't already been done before. And I live to tell the tale, and now I'm stronger than you can ever dare dream. So keep reing on Twitter, James. We're going to keep moving forward. All right, guys, that's all I have. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.